Carolina's recruiting well at defensive tackle this class as well, but Georgia just recruits so many guys at that position. There's like 2 or 3 other top prospects play the same position they're still involved with. And, I have thought for the longest time that deep down, this is where the kid wanted to be, but it was just a matter of, all right, can you kind of beat that aura of UGA, like that opportunity to go play in that defense? Let's be honest, like they put out stars, they put out NFL draft picks, and but I think you look at Traven Robertson, you look at Shane Beamer, they've done a great job recruiting this kid, and even the offensive coaches have done a great job because originally he was recruited to play offensive line. He plays both in high school. Early on, it looked like he was going to be an O-line target for schools. As it has progressed, probably, 4 or 5 months ago, it started to shift, and it was, this guy's actually probably going to play the defensive line in college.
You bring up the Georgia aura, I think, because I was reading earlier today about it, and it was like I was seeing these, the lean is Georgia because his brother, and it's Georgia, right? But I think you make a really good point. That's like an interior defensive line factory, right? Mm-hmm. So we have seen some guys in this transfer portal era, like a Bear Alexander, leave, and of course he left and went. Was he in his 10th school now? I've lost track.
Close, probably.
Yeah. So it's such a machine that maybe you look at it like PJ Dean and go, look, that's what Georgia does. Now I could jump in there and do the Georgia thing, or I can go to a place that just, by the way, had a guy go in the premium rounds of the NFL draft from the interior of the defensive line, right? So there's a path. The defense was really good last year. Maybe I can get on the field quicker at South Carolina to show folks what I can do and maybe move my draft clock faster. And plus, by the way, South Carolina won 9 games last year.
Yeah, and some guys sort of want to follow in the footsteps of, a brother or a cousin or something like that. Other guys are more like, I kind of want to just do my own thing. I want to create my own path. And, I don't know if PJ was like firmly in one of those or the other, but you really never got the impression that he was going to go to Georgia just because of the family ties. Like that might be a small factor. Of course, that helps with just comfort level, familiarity, all those things. But, you always kind of got the impression he was going to make his own decision. And I put a lot of weight, I put a lot of stock in the fact that it would be, I guess, 2 Thursdays ago now, South Carolina had their O-line, D-line camp on campus, and PJ shows up just to get some work in with Traven Robertson. And, a lot of these O-line, D-line camps at this point in the process, you're talking about kind of your rising juniors who are still trying to establish themselves. You're talking about seniors who maybe don't have as many offers, or just high school kids who are trying to develop and get better.
Right. For
a guy who had already taken his official visits, has offers from South Carolina, Georgia, Ohio State. He didn't really have a reason to have to come to that camp. Mm-hmm. And the fact that he drove up here or drove down here to just get some work in with Traven Robertson, I don't know. I couldn't get that out of my head. That I don't know if you're doing that if you're not pretty. Like you're definitely considering going to that school if you're driving up in the heat to just get some work in with Travian. So we'll see at 3:30. We'll all find out for sure. But I think unless it somehow flips again, which I don't think it is. I think it's at the final decision now. I think it's trending towards the Gamecocks getting good news.
Well, like for anything, like if I drive 2.5 hours to see a girl at her work, I'm interested in the girl, right?
Yeah.
You ever driven 2.5 hours? You ever driven half an hour to go see a girl that you weren't interested in?
No.
Be honest. Me either.
Yeah, no.
Me either.
Yeah.
So if you draw it to your point, if you're going to come this far just to work out with, Travian Robertson, obviously you have heavy interest. Because you wouldn't have done that. Just because you're on board. I got nothing going on. Let me go drive 2.5 hours to South Carolina.
Yeah.
I love the vista.
Yeah.
No, that's not happening. So let's hope it's good news at 3:30 with PJ Dean. Another one, Noah Clark. That's what, July 2nd?
Mm-hmm.
I do believe, for another 4-star
so that's
defensive
Wednesday at noon, I think.
Now, that one is like the last 5. Notre Dame's throwing themselves in late in it, but it's what? Let me try off the top of my head. Ready? South Carolina, Duke, Virginia, North Carolina State, and I'm missing one.
You're going to have to look up the other one.
I am, because he's done 5 officials.
Yeah.
I got to look at the other one.
The main two, in my opinion, have been South Carolina, NC State.
Virginia Tech.
Virginia Tech. And that's another one. It's kind of been trending towards South Carolina for a while. And the only thing you always kind of wondered was, all right, NC State trying to pull the kind of hometown card, local, like, so sort of what you see South Carolina's trying to do within their own borders is, why would you need to leave the state to have success? And so with Noah, that was what we were always kind of tracking. Like, it seems like South Carolina, but at the end of the day, will NC State be able to make some big final push? And they even got the final official visit, which I thought was something to monitor. But going into this one, doesn't really feel like there's going to be much drama on this one. I think South Carolina's in a really good spot. I think it would take a late shift, which, again, can always happen. That's recruiting. You never say anything is solidified 100%. But I think they're in great shape there as well. And, you really want to start to project here. You're talking about, you already have Aiden Harris, who's a 4-star defensive tackle as well. You have his brother, but he's going to play linebacker, so we won't count him in this. But you're talking about potentially kind of restocking that interior defensive line room with 3 guys who are, 4-star prospects on all the networks. So there's a consensus that these are blue-chip players, 4-star prospects, guys that can help you. They're a little bit different in terms of skill set, too, which I think is good. You can look at the picture of Noah there on your screen. He's more of a kind of true zero technique, one technique, like nose tackle type, 300-plus pounds, whereas Aiden and PJ are more of kind of that 3 technique, like smaller, relatively speaking, compared to,
quote, unquote, only 290.
Yeah, and so these are guys that will, put on some good weight when they get into the strength and conditioning program here at South Carolina, if it ends up being the case for PJ, and are more kind of like what you saw with like a Tonka, with a TJ Sanders, kind of those pass rush, athletic, quick twitch type defensive tackle prospects. So you're really looking at the possibility of Travian Robertson starting to kind of settle in after a couple of years of being able to establish those foundational relationships with these guys and have some success with some high school, highly regarded prospects at defensive tackle. And then you would hope to ease up from having to rely on the transfer portal at that position quite as much.
Quick question for you before we hit break. Shane has been stacking some solid recruiting classes, like top 25-ish, top 20-ish recruiting classes. I know Spurrier obviously had some good ones. You can't be as successful as South Carolina was in those Spurrier years without going out and recruiting. And Muschamp, no one wants to give him any credit for anything, did bring in some good recruits. How does Shane stack up with consistency of year to year to year to those Spurrier classes? I know the Spurrier class, again, Clowney was the crown jewel of a lot of that. But by depth, I'm talking about. Depth of classes and consistent year to year to year. How's it stack up?
Yeah, I think if you look at just the rankings, it's actually very similar. I think the thing about Shane Beamer's class is it's been a little bit more consistent just in terms of having some balance in the classes. The thing with Spurrier, and maybe this is a result also, you didn't have the portal where you could kind of backfill if you missed on a position. The thing about Spurrier's class is a lot of them, they would have to, it would be like, all right, well, hey, this position is a need, so you're going to have to take oversign at this position. And then maybe next year you're looking at a different position, you're having to oversign. These classes, I think, are a lot more balanced, and I do think early on they've had success, maybe a little bit more so with some under-the-radar guys in terms of just them turning out, developing at South Carolina. But it's pretty similar. I think the key to winning at South Carolina, though, is, and some of this you just don't know for 2-3 years down the road after a class gets on campus, is do you pick the right under-the-radar in-state prospects? Because I will say this, for every Marcus Lattimore, for every Jadeveon Clowney, that they signed under Spurrier, you also had a Devin Taylor who came in and was an NFL guy as a defensive end, like a true 2-star prospect, and developed, got better, great evaluation. You know, you look at DJ Swearinger, was a just enforcer for the South Carolina defense. 3-star guy. He had some offers. Tennessee wanted him. He wasn't completely under the radar, but you're picking the right kind of non-blue chip guys. And so I think we have seen some evidence of that from this Beamer staff as well. But also, like, you can look at this current class, you won't really know if that's the case until 2 or 3 years down the road.
Russ Mitchell hanging out with us, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Terry hanging in for Tyler. David Daresback, A. showed up. You know, security still hasn't tased him. I keep saying, I don't know who this guy is. I don't know why you're letting him in. I'm hoping there's some tasing going on, but so far, they just let him in.
I did see a couple of cops out there, by the way. Like, actually, when I walked up, I know they're still out there.
We'll take a look under the shades during the break. All right, come back. I want to get your thoughts on this interesting little Dawn Staley rumor that's popped up in the last couple of days. By the way, isn't it the greatest example of the world we live in when it comes to rumors in sports media? This whole Dawn Staley rumor. It's perfect, isn't it? We'll get Wes's thoughts next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. We go till noon here on the game.
107.5 The Game in Columbia. 100.5 The Game in Florence. 100.3 The Game in Myrtle Beach. The Game Network. When USC men's hoops coach Lamont Paris talks.
My favorite part of this whole job is the relationships and the development of players.
You hear it here.
Now you have to do a lot of the teaching and a lot of the demonstrating to 11 new guys.
Because it's always Gamecock season on The Game.
Broadcasting live from the Herndon Chevrolet studio. Herndon Chevrolet is your hometown dealer. Stop by today or shop online 24/7 at herndonchevy.com.
Our friends over at Game Day Men's Health can help you as a man reclaim your vitality by optimizing hormone levels. They specialize in TRT, or testosterone replacement therapy, which will help boost your energy and strength. And they're a lot different than other clinics that do similar things. They have in-house labs that can deliver your results in just 15 minutes. They're conveniently located in Northeast Columbia near I-77 and 2 Notch Road. Comfortable man cave style clinics with TVs and refreshments while you wait. Also great, they don't use any long-term contracts. Flexible plans tailored to your needs. TRT tests available to check your levels with absolutely no obligation, and then ongoing monitoring, committed to your success with expert guidance. You can get started by going to GameDayMen'sHealth.com/North-Columbia. Again, located just off I-77, or give them a call, 803-265-3161.
Don't let the popsicles and muddy puddles of summer take over your home. Call Zerorez Carpet and Air Duct Cleaning. Zerorez doesn't use dirt-attracting soap, leaving you a healthy home every time. Take advantage of their summer sale for 15% off all services. That's 15% off carpets, air ducts, area rugs, and more. Mention me, Bill Gunner, at 107.5 The Game to secure this deal, or book online, ZerorezColumbia.com, and ask about Zerorez commercial cleaning too. Zerorez, all they leave is clean.
Job seekers without transportation or in rural areas, SC Works comes to you. Access our virtual engagement center on any device to speak to career experts. Our Rural Connections team brings job fairs with employers and resources near you. Visit scworks.org to learn about these free services and more. SC Works, where there's more.
Sponsored by SC Works, a proud partner of the American Job Center Network, an equal opportunity employer/program. Auxiliary aids and services available upon request to individuals with disabilities. For program funding details and compliance with the Stevens Amendment, please visit www.do.sc.gov/funding.
Looking for a tow that won't drive you insane? Schroeder's Towing has got your back and then some. With almost 1,500 Google reviews and a near 5-star rating, Schroeder's Towing is practically the most respected hookers in town. Whether you're stuck on the side of the road or just need a lift, our reliable service is always ready to roll. Call Schroeder's Towing today.
Schroeder's Towing, the best and fastest hookers in town. It's good. It's good. Wow, this is old Chicago at its best. Let's see the replay. They made the crust by hand? Holy cow, is anyone else even doing that?
It's a miracle. Did you see the impressive sauce coverage and mozzarella blitz?
This is a game changer. Legendary.
It's old Chicago for the win.
Boom! Old Chicago, raising the bar on pizza.
I'm Fritz Drescher, owner of Atlantic Windows and Doors. We've been in the Columbia area for over 40 years and have been your trusted partner in enhancing home comfort, beauty, and energy efficiency. How do we do it? By delivering top-notch product from the nation's leading window and door manufacturers. Expect superior style, tailored to your needs, unmatched quality, and unbeatable value. Plus, our dedicated team handles installation. No third-party contractors. Discover more at awdsc.com.
Plus text tags and title with approved credit. Call 888-320-6359 for details. Looking for a new ride under 20 grand? Get to JT's Kia, where brand new Kias start at $19,990. You'll get the full 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty and up to $2,500 more for your trade. Need financing? How about 0% for 72 months? Bad credit? No worries. JT loves to say you're approved. JT's Kia, Killian Road or Greystone Boulevard.
The Gamecock Central Takeover Hour with Tyler Head, along with Chris Clark and Wes Mitchell from Gamecock Central. Sponsored by Firehouse Subs. Call or text 803-404-6100 on the Game Network and on the 107.5 The Game app.
Terry Ford, Wes Mitchell, as we roll through the 10 o'clock hour here. 11 o'clock hour. What am I saying? Lost my mind. I've been here way too long already, Wes. All right, we're rolling the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour here on the game. All right, so there's this interesting little Dawn Staley rumor that popped out here in the last few days about the Knicks possibly being interested in talking to Dawn about their head coaching vacancy. Now, one, no media outlet has jumped on this thing that I've seen. I haven't looked at it here in the last hour or two. Maybe there's some more power or push behind it, but when I saw it, it was just a rumor from New York Knicks fans' next door neighbor YouTube channel or whatever it was. But
who put this out first? Do we know where this originated? I feel like this is like you were talking about. This is like your report colon,
yes.
and then it's everywhere,
right? And that's what I felt like has happened. Like it was like NBA Rumor Central on social media or something like that. It wasn't a legitimate NBA site where you're getting real Brian Windhorst isn't behind this rumor. Let's put it that way. But it's interesting in theory, right? Do I think it's going to happen? No. But again, Dawn there's no buyout attached to her if she leaves for an NBA gig. So obviously that door's open. I think Dawn is a person that, and this is a compliment, looks to be a trailblazer in her life and career. And being the first female NBA head coach would be quite the trailblazer, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I think her name will randomly pop up for
Portland
stuff like this.
A couple of years ago. Didn't she interview in Portland a couple of years ago?
Yeah, her name popped up there. I'm forgetting the other ones, but I feel as if her name has popped up at other spots. The story, by the way, that I saw, Knicks Fan TV.
There we go. There's another one.
On Twitter,
Knicks Fan TV
is apparently credited with being one of the first or the first to mention this. So, credit them if it ends up being correct. But
thumbs up.
Right. First of all, it's great for her, and I even believe for the university and for the basketball program here that this would even be a thought, like that she would be mentioned, and that people are going, hey, I could maybe see that. But yes, she is a trailblazer. I just for somebody who advocates for women's sports so much, now on one hand you would certainly have to say, well, to be the first female NBA head coach, does that open up lots of doors for other women potentially? Yes, I would say so. But she, I believe, adores the idea of helping these young women develop on the court, but also off the court. I mean, how many times there was another shot of her? She's at a game. I think it was last night, and you got 3-4 former Gamecocks there. She is constantly at the games of her former players. She's supporting players that didn't even play for her in some instances, and has these relationships out there. I don't know. You never say never. I just feel like she has such a great thing going here. It would take the most perfect of situations for her to leave the platform that she's on right now.
I agree with you 100% on that. It's got to be something to make her say, you know what, this is the right move for more than just basketball. It's more than just basketball with her, right? So it would have to be, I'm doing something to open doors for women in the future, but you hit it on the head. She has such a great thing here. Over the last 5 years, best women's basketball program in the country. 2, this pipeline of talent that's coming in here. 3, obviously, the foundation, sustainability of what she's doing here. There's no end in sight for any of that, right? And plus, you know, she makes it pretty good. She doesn't have to work part-time at Five Guys. She's doing okay financially. Like, name me the college basketball coach female that makes more money than her. We just finished the list.
Yeah.
Life is good, right? So it's got to be something, and I'll be honest with you. Here, let's get down to the business part of it. Yes, you're a trailblazer by taking that job. And yes, they were but think about this. They made it to the NBA Eastern Conference Finals, did the Knicks. Fired their head coach.
Yeah.
Run that one through your head. James Dolan, the owner of the Knicks, is looked at as one of the worst owners in professional sports.
Yeah.
So you got everything here, right? And I get trailblazing and I get opening doors. But ready? Let's go by this. Do you want that professional headache in your life to where you have control here? The only thing you control there is coaching the team. You don't have control of buying your groceries. You have no control of the front office, no control of the ownership. You have very little control in the big picture compared to what you have here.
Yeah, and I agree 100%, man. I mean, there's just a lot of headaches that come with that. You have this is your program at this point at South Carolina. If you're there, you're coaching the players they tell you to coach, basically. And if it doesn't work out, to your point, there's just very little shelf life in terms of a coach at that level in general. You know, it's we see that throughout professional sports. How often is it even the head coach's fault and, you know, they get fired? So I'm with you. I mean, it's something to talk about. It speaks to how big her name is and how crazy it is what she's done here that this is even a conversation I think we're having. But I don't know. I think I would imagine Dawn gets to sit there and look at some of the stuff that's out there about her and gets to just, like, giggle about some of the stuff that's thrown out.
Let's say Wes Mitchell is in, like, that kind of air. You're close. You're not quite there yet. You're getting there.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you sit back at this stuff and just giggle and laugh at some of the
and I think,
things that
you gotta have fun with it,
You've
I
got
think,
to,
too.
right?
Like, if you're going to be a celebrity to the level that she is, you have to have fun with it, I think. But, yeah, some of the stuff that's out there is wild. I mean, it's not bad for book sales either. That's
true.
You know, people are putting you in line for NBA jobs and stuff like that.
A place like New York Knicks fans on YouTube is running with you, does it get any better than that?
But that thing went everywhere, though. It's all over.
But isn't that great the way our media works today? Just like that. If you have enough subscribers to something, you put out something, it's got a little sauce to it, and it hits the right fan base.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then you get this kind of stuff.
Yeah, like I said, though, you gotta lean into it a little bit, I think, and Dawn Staley obviously does. She has fun with all this stuff, you know, on Twitter, X, whatever, and yeah, it just ultimately, though, I think it's a compliment to who she is and to what she has built. But man, she just loves developing these young women, so I can't see her stepping away from that at the end of the day.
Lennar Sellers, I mean, man, you go to the Manning passing camp, you made it, right? Let's talk about that next. Want to talk about that a little bit?
Let's do it.
All right, that's next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Wes Mitchell, Terry Ford, David Ayer. Kale's here. We go till top of the hour, noon on the game.
107.5 The Game in Columbia. 100.5 The Game in Florence. 100.3 The Game in Myrtle Beach. The Game Network.
Coming up July 7th, we're shuffling the lineup on the game. Stay tuned for more info.
Plus text tags and title with approved credit. Call 888-320-6359 for details. Looking for a new ride under 20 grand? Get to JT's Kia, where brand new Kias start at $19,990. You'll get the full 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty and up to $2,500 more for your trade. Need financing? How about 0% for 72 months? Bad credit? No worries. JT loves to say you're approved. JT's Kia, Killian Road or Greystone Boulevard.
Twin Peaks is the best in the game. Here, the ultimate lunch lineup boasts wall-to-wall sports and scenic views. When you're hungry and in a hurry, the Scratch Kitchen delivers lunch in the clutch. I mean, where else can you order a 29-degree draft beer and a quickie combo on your lunch break? Only at Twin Peaks, the #1 sports bar.
Twin Peaks Scratch Kitchen scores every time. Dig into hand-smashed burgers, chef-inspired flatbreads, and more at your local lodge.
Hey, y'all, Jay Phillips here from my good friends at Dan's Fan City in Harbison. Ceiling fans don't sound like something you think about a lot because you don't really need to, but when you've got good ones, they work so well, keeping energy costs down and your comfort level up. All kinds of fans at Dan's Fan City, big to small and quiet, quality fans. They have accessories and light kits, fan blades, and more. Stop by and see them soon, Harbison Boulevard next to Total Wine, or call Dan's Fan City, 781-FANS. You'll be glad you did.
Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union presents scenes from Palmetto Citizens job interviews.
Tell me, Emily, what makes you the right fit for our vice president of Getting Pumped role?
Well, I have 8 years of banking experience, and helping people get great rates makes me super excited.
Oh, can you elaborate?
Yeah, sometimes it's like a woo, other times it's more of a no, yeah!
Wow, just wow.
Palmetto Citizens. Feel the love. Federally insured by NCUA.
Golf enthusiast, immerse yourself in the perfect business and social networking experience while enjoying the thrill of the game at the Players Club. Nestled on the 1600 block of Main Street in Columbia, the Players Club offers the ideal venue for making business connections and holding corporate events with their luxurious lounge for cocktails and delicious food. And for a limited time, the Players Club is waiving all initiation fees for new member signups. Take a tour. Call 803-608-7692 or playersclubsc.com.
Everyone needs to have at least one person in their corner in life. When you don't, it's an extremely lonely and frightening place to be. But knowing you have that one person gives you peace and hope. I'm John Morgan of Morgan & Morgan. Since 1988, myself and my firm have been in so many corners for so many clients for so many years. We became the largest injury firm in the world for a reason, and it's not even close. We fought like hell for you. We fight the bullies, automobile insurance companies, the makers of unsafe products, medical providers who injured or killed their own patients. It has been such an honor and made my life complete. If you ever need us, it's easy. On your mobile device or computer, visit forthepeople.com, and then we get to work 24/7. Whether you're hurt in a car crash, injured on the job, or have questions about your Social Security, we're here for you. Morgan & Morgan, for the people.
Joe Sandifer, Esquire, 11915 Plaza Drive, Suite 301, Murrells Inlet, South Carolina, 29576.
There's never been a better time to find a job through SC Works. SC Works staff help you network with employers, update your resume, and even submit applications at job fairs. More job fairs and more hiring events than ever before. Visit SC Works online or a center near you today. Sponsored by SC Works, where there's more. Sponsored by SC Works, a proud partner of the American Job Center Network and Equal Opportunity Employer/Program. Auxiliary aids and services available on request for individuals with disabilities. For program funding details and compliance with the Stevens Amendment, please visit do.sc.gov/funding.
Powered by Integrated Media, the Game TV. Sponsored by Shepherd's Glass. For auto, home, and commercial glass. ShepherdsGlass.com. In Chapin and West Columbia, the Game TV. Sponsored by Shepherd's Glass. Shepherd's Glass.
The Gamecock Central Takeover Hour with Tyler Head, along with Chris Clark and Wes Mitchell from Gamecock Central. Sponsored by Firehouse Subs. Call or text 803-404-6100 on the Game Network and on the 107.5 The Game app.
Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Terry Ford, Wes Mitchell, David Dare, Kale. Just saw a very interesting trade flash up, and then we'll get back to Lennar Sellers. The Pittsburgh Steelers and Miami Dolphins made a deal. Former All-Pro players. Jalen Ramsey, corner, goes to Pittsburgh. Minkah Fitzpatrick, safety, goes to Miami. I just saw that flash real quick. I got to double-check to make sure that's right. But that's a deal. Interesting deal. If that's, and there might be some draft capital going there, but I just saw that one.
It looks like it is, right, according to ESPN.com. Yeah, true.
Interesting. Neither guy's what they used to be, but still, when you see those two names get thrown out in a deal, you're like, oh, okay. Huh. That's something. Because the Dolphins were moving on from Jalen Ramsey. I never heard anything about the Steelers being open to trading Minkah Fitzpatrick, because he was like, one of the leaders in that locker room.
Yeah, those guys are getting old, man, which is will make you feel. I remember when Minkah Fitzpatrick was recruited by South Carolina, and they were actually one of the 2 or 3 finalists for him way back in the day, and he's going on to be, an All-Pro guy. Mm-hmm. Jalen Ramsey, an All-Pro as well. I'd love to know their actual behind-the-scenes detail on this swap. Basically, you're swapping older, former DBs, All-Pro DBs.
I wonder, and the money. The money probably a factor involved in this as well. But I mean, again, I know Jalen Ramsey was going to get traded because they basically said, Jalen, we're going to trade you. But Minkah Fitzpatrick is very interesting. And I just like, wow, didn't think that would be a deal. And again, I know Minkah Fitzpatrick isn't as good as he used to be, but still, I don't know. It's just a weird trade to me, just off the top of my head, Wes.
No, same. Also, Steelers get Dolphins get a 2027 fifth-round pick back from Pittsburgh, and the Steelers get a 2027 seventh-round pick. So it's kind of a pick swap, too.
Yeah, swapping late-round picks.
One gets a seventh, one gets a fifth. Yeah, very interesting.
That's an interesting trade. But that just came over the wire as we were yapping. All right, so Lennar Sellers goes to the Manning passing camp. Have we ever seen any video of the Manning passing camp?
You'll see it float around on Twitter, just quick clips, basically. That's about it.
What have you heard of the Manning pass? Besides Johnny Manziel was drunk and couldn't get up as a counselor. What else have we actually heard about? Do you have any deep dive details on the Manning passing camp? I was thinking about that this morning as I saw the Lennar Sellers was at the Manning passing camp, and there's pictures with him and John Gruden, who I didn't know was at the Manning pass. Is Gruden also working out of the Manning passing camp?
Gruden's everywhere right now.
He's everywhere,
honestly.
It's hilarious.
But yeah, it's a pretty cool event from everything I've heard. I think Spencer was out there a couple of the years. Jake Bentley went a while back, and essentially it is a QB fraternity event where you're getting out there, you're getting the top guys in the country, and some of it is, just networking. The guys go out there, they room together as well, so there is kind of some, I'm sure, enjoyable aspects of it. And then also, though, they do get on the field. There's a developmental aspect. It reminds me a little bit kind of what you see from the Elite 11 in high school, where they're going out there. There's a script where all the guys are throwing certain, combinations and route combos and stuff like that. And there's actual on-field development, from the Mannings. And so this is something that's grown over the years, I think. And but it's one of those things, if you're invited to it, that says something. Like the Mannings have taken note of your potential, of your talent. And for Lenoris, again, to go from kind of a guy this time last year, we all were projecting him to be the starter, but, he was battling last offseason to be the starting quarterback, and now you're talking about a national name, Heisman, trophy potential finalist this year, and I think just speaks to how far his stock has risen during that time.
Isn't that interesting? If we think back to this time last year, because there was a decent amount of first-year starters in the SEC at quarterback, right? Everything was Nico. There was a little bit of Lenore's stuff, very little, because again, to be fair, he only played a handful of snaps behind Rattler. It's funny when you fast forward a year, you look at where Lenore Sellers is, and you look at where Nico is, or Vandergriff retired from football. It's just really interesting now we're a year down the road. And in some ways, maybe that lack of spotlight helped Lenoris. He could go through that, first 6 weeks of last year, kind of feeling his way around until he popped at the last half. So maybe it all worked out perfect for him if you kind of take a look back.
Well, I do think it's always fascinating. What are you hearing from kind of local people? What is the national or kind of regional, if you're looking at the SEC, what is the expectation for a particular player? And if you go back, there was a lot of buzz here locally about Lenoris. You look at some of the lists, though, going into last season, they had him as the last or second to last quarterback in the SEC. And, and in kind of the gotcha day of sports media right now, it's easy for people to go back and be like, well, you're an idiot if you had Lenoris this low. But if you're covering this stuff from a conference-wide standpoint, you're going, I've seen him throw 5 passes last season. Where am I supposed to put him? So I do think it worked out very well for Lenoris, obviously. I still think after game 1, even though there was even more progress when you got to the middle of the season, even from game 1 to game 2, it was a clear, different comfort level. You look at going to Kentucky, a Kentucky team, we didn't know at the time that they were going to struggle. That they had a great, just kind of dominant week 1 win, whereas South Carolina just had a just messy, ugly late win over ODU. You were going, this could be a tough game, and Lenoris went out there and played very well at Kentucky, his kind of second career start. And so I think you look back, I'm sure locally we were all hearing great things about Lenoris. I'm sure in Knoxville, we have our guy in Nico going into the season. I'm sure Kentucky thought, hey, Vandergriff, this is someone he wasn't playing at Georgia just because he was behind some of these other guys. This is a 5-star player, and we saw it absolutely did not work out.
Right.
And so quarterback, really with any position, but certainly quarterback, you do not know until the guys get out there in live action, till they're getting hit, till they're facing SEC defenses, and you truly can. You can gather all the information in the world. You can park a drone over practice, and the guy could hit every throw the entire offseason. But until you go do it in the games and show you can handle that spotlight, you just don't know. And I think that's the thing about Lenoris. He has shown, especially as the season progressed, that he can handle that spotlight.
Well, that's what was interesting was Lenoris got better as the year went along. And like Nico regressed, got worse. And that was something where you're like, okay, didn't expect that. But like to your point, after the ODU game, you get the Kentucky game, and you start stacking games. And the things that I remember early on was the fumble issues. Those went away as the year went along. And he got better at every aspect of his game as the season progressed. And at the end, he was the reason you were winning games. And, the Missouri comeback, he does it with his arm. Then you got the Clemson game, doing it with his legs. The A&M game did it because it felt like it was him against the entire A&M defense for a bit. So we just see how he progressed. And it's one of those things where, again, everybody makes predictions. Look, this is what we do to fill air, especially right now in talking season, right? But it's like we think we know what we know until we don't know it. I think Lenoris Sellers is another great example of that.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm curious, the thing for me, all right, what is the next step for Lenoris Sellers? And I was listening to one of his interviews from out there at the Manning Passing Academy, and he said anticipation, footwork. And, that's something we've heard quite a bit about this offseason. And I think there's a little bit of a misconception, especially more like nationally, about who Sellers is as a quarterback. Like, yeah, he's one of the hardest guys to tackle in the country at that position. Yeah, he can take off for 75 yards or whatever it was against LSU. But, I mean, the dude physically can deliver the football. Like, he can throw the football. Yeah. He can throw the football with accuracy. For him, it's just about being more consistent with it. And to his point, anticipation, that's, all right, this guy isn't open yet. Let me throw him open. Or this guy's about to break into that tiny window. He's not there yet, but I know where the two defenders are. I know where my receiver is, and I'm going to anticipate him hitting this window, and then I'm going to deliver the football right before he gets open. And that's something, though, you only learn with time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you only can do that. And against certain, you know, in high school, that window to throw through is massive.
Right, it's a picture window.
Yeah, and in the NFL, you know, in the NFL, it'll be an even different jump.
Mm-hmm.
It will be the guys aren't even ever that open. You just have to throw them open.
Yep.
And in college, the guys are open, but you have to know exactly when they're going to be open. And if you are late, they're not open anymore. So I think that will be the next step for him. And the footwork part goes back to the consistency, the accuracy. Knowing, okay, I have time to set my feet. I have time to be a pocket passer on this play, and then I can still be a dual threat running quarterback on other plays.
If he gets it from the pocket consistently to go with all the other gifts he has, then he becomes unstoppable. He truly does.
And he can throw the football.
No,
Like
he can.
that's the part that some guys just can't.
He was one of the best deep ball throwers in the SEC last year. If you look at completion percentage down the field, plus 20 yards.
I believe it, and that was with a. How different is the narrative if that deep ball that got dropped in game one
by Jared Brown?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How does his confidence boost in that game and he plays well the rest of? I mean, how different is it if that ball gets caught?
Great point. All right, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Phil Steele. We're going to talk about Phil Steele's preseason projections for the Gamecocks with Wes. That's next here on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, up until noon on the game. Final segment. Hang out with our buddy Wes Mitchell, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Terry Ford in for Tyler. Dave's here. Kale's here. We're just we were looking at the bruising on Elijah Campbell's leg from his hamstring injury in slow pitch softball.
I'm glad that wasn't on the game TV, by the way.
Put it on there.
They don't want to see that.
Ugly.
They don't want to see that.
When I popped a hammy years ago, I never had that bruising like that, man. That's nasty looking.
I'm glad we have this graphic up right now, by the way, because they didn't have to see that, which is they don't know how thankful they are.
It's pretty. It was like different colors, wasn't it?
Yeah, day one injury, by the way, for him.
I know.
Signed that big contract to go play, and then
like you said,
he's on the shelf.
The big off-season signing.
Yeah.
And
the fans are ticked.
Yeah. That once I saw how bruised it was, I'm like, because when he first asked me, I said, dude, when I popped mine years ago, I was like 4 to 6 weeks legit. That might be 4 to 6 months, Wes.
Well, I thought it was at first. I was like, this might be like a quote unquote injury.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a lot of people be like, I pulled something.
Yeah.
And then they're better in a few days.
I mean, let's look at him. He looks soft. No,
I wasn't trying to say that, but I kind of was. But that is a legit injury. Like, he went to the doctor. He was diagnosed. Insurance company was called. Like, this was a legit.
I'm not going to lie. I've very rarely seen the bruising. Every now and then you'll see it on a bad. That was a bad one. When you get the bruising, it's a bad one.
Pretty tough.
So I will now apologize to Elijah Campbell for my first thoughts of how soft he is. That was real.
Real injuries.
You know, if they would have acquired you, how's your hamstrings?
They are old, but they are intact, which is more than Elijah can say.
Because rumor is you were a slow pitch softball guy for years.
Still am.
And you still are.
I still have my hamstrings.
And you still have your hamstrings. Just saying, sometimes when you acquire different talent, it takes you down certain roads.
They didn't do that. They didn't do the medical
That's right.
check.
They didn't do the medicals on you compared to Elijah. Just saying. You know what? I think you're handling it well.
He's out there, has no idea we're talking about him.
He has no idea. All right. Phil Steele came out with his projections about, and look, I love Phil Steele's yearbook. It's the Bible for college football's preseason yearbooks. Not as much love for South Carolina as we've seen from other folks kind of predicting the preseason for USC.
Yeah, and I'll give. So Phil Steele does not care about your fan base's take. He doesn't care, if he upsets you. He has his way. He has his. I feel like he was kind of doing a more analytical approach on this stuff.
Computer models, he does things.
Yeah, but before that was analytics and all these different algorithms everywhere now.
Right.
I feel like he was doing that before this stuff was everywhere. So it's not that he hates the Gamecocks, but his model has South Carolina tied for 10th in the SEC. Now, I tell you what, though, Terry, there's a lot of just grouping here. Like a lot of – so he actually has Georgia 1.
Mm-hmm.
On paper, I would have Texas 1, me personally.
Me
but he has Georgia 1, Texas 2, Bama 3, and then we don't have time to go through all of them, but South Carolina tied with Auburn, of all people, at 10th.
Phil's models like A&M, like Florida. It's interesting.
Like Oklahoma.
Likes Oklahoma. You know the problem with these models? They don't play on the field, Wes.
They do not.
So you can get into it tomorrow more. Tyler will be back. You guys can dig into the Phil Steele a little bit more. We spent too much time on Elijah's hamstring. Halftime show is next. Thanks, Wes. Halftime show, Terry Ford. Happy you can hang out with us as we roll up until 3 o'clock here on the game. Tyler's out, but Dave is back from his vacation. Kale's here hanging around. We'll have Tyler back tomorrow. Dave will actually be here again tomorrow as well. And, besides that, I don't know who's here this week. I've lost track.
Unless I get called away for...
I mean, you are, you are a spy. Let's be honest. It'd be funny seeing you, doing spy stuff.
You won't see me doing it.
That's true until it's over. I could see you, like hanging from a ceiling, parachuting in almost like Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible.
Let's not get carried away here.
With you're wearing the all-black outfit like Tom Cruise did, and you're just dropping into the out of the ceiling. I could see David Ayer doing that.
I could drop in out of the ceiling, but it won't be because
no, you do a face plant on the desk. So Dave's back. Kale's here. Might even bug Elijah later on. We'll talk to him because there's a ton of NBA stuff going on. And Elijah and I always dork up talking hoops. So I might dork up talking hoops with Elijah later in the show. Mike Uva, 12:30. Mike has a couple of posts up on Gamecock Central I want to get into with him regarding the two deep, his projected two deep for South Carolina's offense, and also his 10 questions on a Sunday that is 10 weeks away from the kickoff. So we'll get Mike Uva in here from Gamecock Central at 12:30 here on the halftime show as well. All right, so a couple things. First, P.J. Dean, we're in within 3.5 hours, so we find out where P.J. Dean is going to commit. Against a verbal, we get it. But P.J. Dean, the four-star interior defensive lineman from the state of North Carolina, will make his decision, South Carolina or Georgia. We were talking to Wes. Wes thinks the lean could be South Carolina right now. Remember, Dean's brother played at Georgia. Georgia's been an interior defensive line factory to the NFL. But South Carolina just recently had T.J. Sanders, a premium round draft pick to the NFL from playing the interior of the defensive line. So we'll see. Wes thinks there's a lean to South Carolina. Dean showed up at the lineman camp here recently. Just showed up to work with Travion Robertson. So, again, it feels like a teeny bit ahead for South Carolina. We'll see because you never know. You never know until you know. But that's today at 3:30, about 3.5 hours from now. And, of course, within the 2 days, we'll be hearing about Noah Clark, where he's going to another four-star interior defensive lineman. His backyard's like NC State. It feels like it's South Carolina, NC State's a little bit of a lean to South Carolina. So we'll find out on Wednesday on that commit. All right, in the portal, South Carolina has lost another pitcher. When it comes to losing players in the portal, Ashton Crowther has hit the portal. The 10th pitcher and 18th player to hit the portal for South Carolina since the end of the season. Crowther, ERA about 4.28. I mean, he had some good moments. Also, I mean, again, like the entire pitching staff, had some moments of struggling. And I said this hours ago on the Extra Point. South Carolina, Paul Maneri, the head coach, said in the as the season was coming to a close, you need pitchers to throw harder and hitters to hit the ball farther. Basically, power pitchers and power hitters in today's world of college baseball. Now, I mean, Coastal Carolina made it all the way to the College World Series final without a lot of power hitters, but they did have a phenomenal pitching staff. So, is that the end-all, be-all? It isn't, but you see the teams that are consistently successful from year to year, for the most part, follow that model of power pitching and power hitting. That's the base or the foundation of the baseball program. And Coach Maneri, going through his first year after being away from the game for a few seasons, saw close up in the SEC, you need that. You need that to compete. So South Carolina has brought in some power arms. There's no doubt. But, again, if you don't take advantage of all of the vast resources that you get in today's world when it comes to pitching, and I'm talking about TrackMan, there's so many things from the technology and science side that is maximizing pitchers. If you are not using it, you're behind. You just are. And look, I am one of those people, I think you need to combine old school scouting and new school analytics and technology to do this at its most efficient and effective. You just do. But if you're not using one and you're all in on the other, I think you're missing the boat, especially when it comes to the technology like a TrackMan. I don't understand. You've got to evolve and look at the world around you and what's working for others. And what you did 3, 4, 5 years ago, no one's saying you can't do it, but how do you make it better? Well, you make it better by using this thing called technology. You just do. Build your own pitching lab. I mean, South Carolina spent a lot of money on all that stuff here. You got to use it. Last year, it wasn't being used the way it could be used or should be used. That has to change. I don't care who you're bringing in to pitch. You want to make them the best they can be? Hit the on button on the TrackMan. It starts there. It just does. So we'll see where this goes moving forward, but at the end of the day, that's what is going to maximize your pitching. It just will. And you've got to embrace it. Doesn't matter if you like it or not. You have to embrace it because that's the future. And that's where all this is going. And you got to be on board. But Crowther is leaving. And again, we've seen 10 pitchers now go, and the pitching was terrible last year. The offense was near the bottom of the SEC as well. And there were games defensively, even though this team was a solid defensive squad, for the most part, there were games the defense let them down. It was everywhere. And look, players leave when the program's bad. And players come in to make the program better. It's the way this always goes. And again, Coach Maneri and his staff have done a nice job of bringing in players from the portal. It's one of the best portal classes in America. But if you're not going to use the tools at your disposal to maximize the players you're getting, you're really putting a ceiling on yourself, especially with the pitching. Pitching has gotten so good because of analytics and science and technology and these TrackMan type systems that, hitting is just really falling behind. And that's why you've seen, what is it called? The 3-outcome offense, especially in the majors. Because it's tough to put together 3, 4, 5 hits an inning. And it might be easier in the college game, but it's still not as easy as it used to be. Because pitching has just gotten ahead of hitting. And for your pitchers to also be ahead of hitters, you've got to use this technology that everybody using. Wake Forest with their pitching lab. I mean, that's where this thing is at, and you've just got to use it. But if you're not, I just really think you're having your pitchers go to the mound almost like with their arm tied to their side. You can't do it. So anyway, that's where everything is at regarding another pitcher hitting the portal at South Carolina in Crowther. And look, the transfer portal is going a lot better than I thought it was going to for South Carolina. I mean, I'll just be honest. They have brought in some nice pieces through that portal. And I thought it might be an issue after some of the stuff coming out about, what went on during the season. But Coach Maneri and that staff, again, they've done some good work getting themselves restocked, so to speak. So we'll see where all that goes. All right, also today we got a lot of Gamecock stuff to get to on the football side. Mike Uva, 12:30. Phil Steele with his projections are coming out. We'll be getting to that as well. He's not as big on the Gamecocks as others. We'll go over that with you, obviously. But that's happening. Mike Uva with his projected 2 deep and also his 10 questions, all that stuff about Gamecock football and what happens to P.J. Dean. All that today on the show. Up next, we will take a look at those Phil Steele projections and let you know where Phil has the Gamecocks in his preseason yearbook. That is next on the halftime show. Dave's here, Kale's here, and I'm going to make Dave really happy. Dave very rarely is happy. Matter of fact, I'll make Dave happy really quick. I told you this off the air. I was going to save it for on the air, Dave. I decided over the weekend, what the heck, I will try to watch this Severance show and see if it will keep me awake. And you know what? I stayed awake. It's growing on me. It's all right. Some very interesting stuff. Got a little thriller action going there, a little unknown what the big corporate devil is really doing. Blah blah blah. Okay, I'll see where it's going. I'll see where we end up here.
Reminds me a lot of my former job.
Yeah, you mean your last radio station you worked at?
Yeah.
Same kind of stuff? Well, no wonder you like it so much. And plus, you are a spy. So it makes sense. But, yeah, it's a little slow at times where it makes me want to take a nap. But it was starting to get interesting in that first episode once I got past the very, very boring first 10 or 15 minutes.
The first 5 minutes is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life.
I feel bad for you. I really do. I feel bad for you. There's some good stuff happening in the first 3 episodes, so I'm going to keep going.
Gets better.
I'm starting to get interested in some of the things that are happening. The guy in the robe, I know he's probably going to die at some point or he's going to go away, but that was pretty good stuff.
Just wait till the funeral.
No, see, now I know he's dead. Thanks, Dave. No one can kill a show like Dave. So now I know he does die.
I thought that was pretty clear from the episode.
Did he drop dead in the gas station parking lot? Is that when he croaked?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought he looked at what's his name and went.
He had blood coming out of his nose.
Yeah, blood coming out everywhere. It was just like, anyway. All right, so yeah, Dave, I'm going to give this Severance thing a whirl. We'll see. I'm going to go through a season. We'll see what's happening. When I told Dave it bored me, he was actually, I don't know what offended you more, me saying Severance was boring or me like making fun of Larkin Poe.
I kill most people for either of those statements.
All right, let's talk some Phil Steele. His projections for Gamecock football. We'll do it next here on the halftime show right here on the game. Halftime show, Terry Ford rolling up until 3 on the game. David Eric Hales here. Mike Uva, bottom of the hour, 12:30 Gamecock Central. We're going to talk about a couple of his posts that he's put up on the GamecockCentral.com site, the projected two deep, and also his 10 Sunday questions about Carolina football. Phil Steele, not as down with the Gamecocks as others. Phil Steele has South Carolina in his preseason projections as tied for 10th in the SEC with Auburn, ahead of South Carolina, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Florida, LSU, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, Alabama, Texas, Georgia. Again, my thing is, look, Phil Steele uses computer simulations, and he's a guy he was using computers to do this stuff before anybody else. There's no thought process to it. It's not with his heart. It's cold numbers with Phil Steele. So to me, again, if I was putting this together, I would put Texas ahead of Georgia. Just because I have more faith in Arch Manning being good than I do Gunnar Stockton. No offense. And I think Texas, look, obviously Georgia's stockpiled a ton of talent, but so's Texas. And both teams are going to lose talent every year in the NFL because they're so well stocked with talent. I just always go back and look at, all else being equal to a point, I just think Texas is going to have the better quarterback. Same thing, I think Texas got a better quarterback than Alabama, tied or third in Phil Steele's preseason projections. Then again, this is not with the heart, this is with numbers. Oklahoma, Texas A&M, LSU tied for 4th. I think LSU is better than A&M or Oklahoma. They brought in a ton of players in the portal. I like Nussmeier as a quarterback, Garrett Nussmeier. I think LSU is going to be better than A&M or Oklahoma. They better be for Brian Kelly's sake. Brian Kelly could be the first coach to get run off averaging almost 10 wins a year. Brian Kelly's got LSU has to be in the college football playoff this year, or if nothing else, the seat's going to get really hot for Brian Kelly for year 5. And with Oklahoma, look, Brent Venables, no offense, 2 of the 3 years of Brent Venables have been at Oklahoma, and yes, that is a football term. Oklahoma brought in John Mateer, really good quarterback at Washington State, through the portal. Also through the portal, this was weird, Mateer came through the portal walking with his offensive coordinator. So not only does Oklahoma get Mateer, but Mateer's OC. But Oklahoma, I'm not ready to give Oklahoma this kind of a jump. I don't know how much confidence I have in Brent Venables. And A&M, look, they're always A&M. They win 7 or 8 games no matter what. They had the 1 year, the COVID year? But they just missed the college football playoff and had that double-digit win season. But A&M, for the most part, is A&M. They win 8 games or somewhere like that, no matter what. Last year, started off really hot, ended up being just A&M. I mean, I like Reed, the young quarterback. I think there's something there to build on. I like Mike Elko. I think that was a good choice as head coach. But it seems like it doesn't matter who the head coach is at A&M. Doesn't matter who the quarterback is, who the starting center is, who the starting edge rushers are. They end up being A&M. And until it changes, skeptical. Sorry. Florida, Tennessee, and Ole Miss are tied for 7th ahead of South Carolina. I get Tennessee. I think Tennessee will be okay. I do. I think if Joey Aguilar wins a starting gig, came in through the portal from UCLA via Appalachian State, and Aguilar just points guards that offense. Doesn't try to do too much. Just drops back, hey, you're open, here's the football, go make a play. If Aguilar does that, I think Tennessee's going to be just fine. Because, the last 2 guys, like Nico was a highly recruited, highly regarded high school prospect. Remember, had the big NIL deal before he even got to campus. He had a little prima donna diva written on him. Before that, Joe Milton with all that physical ability everybody falls in love with. Until you see him try to play on the field. Until, Joe Milton drops back, throws the ball deep, it takes out a car windshield. Joe Milton throwing an out route, just hit the sideline guy who holds a chain in the head. Aguilar, because he's not a fancy big-time recruit out of high school, or he's not some guy with all these great physical skills, looks like a quarterback when he gets off the bus. Aguilar might be the guy to run this offense the best since Hendon Hooker, with just getting the ball out to the playmakers. Hey, he's open. I'm going to throw him the ball and let him run for 30 yards. That might make this offense be the best it's been since Hendon Hooker left. It's a very quarterback-friendly offense at Tennessee. And Ole Miss, look, Lane is back to, I think, what Lane's comfort level is, and that's being the hunter. Last year, Ole Miss was the hunted. I don't think that's Lane's wheelhouse. I just don't. I think Lane is much more comfortable sneaking up on everybody, crawling through the bushes, than he is being the hunted. I think Ole Miss will be fine. Florida, I don't know. I mean, you won 3 games in the year. Okay, I'm happy for you. Seems like you got your quarterback if he's going to be healthy and DJ Lagway. You have talent. But, I mean, even last year you ended the year on a winning streak, but that's really saved Billy Napier's job. And you got to a bowl game. Okay. But if Florida, the expectation is, especially with the expanded college football playoff, is to be in the playoffs. Not just, go hover around a bit over 500 and go to some bowl game nobody cares about. The expectation of Florida is to compete for the college football playoff every year. I don't know if Billy Napier's that guy. I think Billy Napier could go off and be like Brent Bielema. Billy Napier could go off to a Power 4 school where he'll have more control over everything, and Billy Napier will be fine, and he'd be a winning coach. Florida is a tough gig. You got to have a certain personality, a certain swagger to you, a certain confidence, because you're the minute you get hired to Florida, there's people who want to fire you. That's just the reality of Florida. I don't know if Florida's turned the corner. I wouldn't put them at 4. It's even at the tie for 7th, which basically looks like they're more sitting at the 5 hole. But we'll see where all that goes. But that's Phil Steele's projections. Also, Phil Steele has South Carolina ranked 27th nationally, and their overall power ranking is 45 for their projected national finish. So Phil not as into the preseason thoughts for South Carolina as a lot of other people are. All right, Mike Uva, Gamecock Central. We're going to talk to Mike next about his 2 posts. One is projected 2 deep, and 2, his 10 thoughts list. That is next. Here on the game. I'm on the halftime show now, Dave. I'm not the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour anymore. I go to the men's clinic. I have brain fog. Halftime show. Mike Uva next from Gamecock Central on the game. All right, get Mike Uva in here, Gamecock Central. Who's getting ready to go. Now, you told me you're getting ready to go cover the Bruins?
Yeah, they have their development camp, which for all you non-hockey people out there, that is basically like rookie mini camp for hockey. So, the Bruins, they just had the draft the other day. You want to talk about drafts being long. Holy cow, this thing took over 4.5 hours. I was covering it. I was at the TD Garden, and it was closer to midnight. But then again, that was probably the least amount of traffic I've ever seen in my life going from Boston to Rhode Island. So you pick your poison.
Well, dude, the Bruins were stoked. The kid Wood Higgins fell to him at 7. Everybody thought he'd be gone before 7. So they got this player who was like the Ace Bailey of the NHL draft. They fell to the Bruins, so they got to be happy, right?
Yeah, well, how about this? And this will kind of bring people back into it, the non-hockey people. This is pretty crazy. So the Bruins put a tweet out this morning saying that Higgins and then their second pick, Moore, were not going to be here today because they had some flight issues. They had 2 flights canceled between Saturday and Sunday coming out from L.A. They finally get into Boston at 3 a.m., get to the team hotel at 4 a.m., they get to the arena today at 6:45 a.m., physical at 7, and they were on the ice at 9:50. So I say that because I love hockey players and just their mentality, but that kind of shows that because if this was the NBA, you'd have some, you'd have some divas. They'd be like, oh, you know what, I can't make it out there. Oh, I can't do that. I mean, I got to get my beauty sleep. I got to get my pancakes first. So, I thought that was pretty neat. And, certainly we talk about the difference with college athletics. If you need to just find some athletes out there that still love it for the game, there you go.
I mean, hockey players, dude, they're another breed, man. There's no doubt. Hey, Mike Uva with us, Gamecock Central, hanging out. First of all, start on your 2 deep projections for the offense. And as you went through this, Mike, because you always have a preconceived idea where you're going to, you actually put it on paper or computer. Did anything change in your thought process about what you figured you were going to write? And then once you actually got to that room, you said, no, wait a minute, I think I'm going to project it this way.
I think the big thing that stood out to me outside of the obvious, which is there's a lot of depth on the offensive line, is the battle that you're going to see between the wide receivers and trying to find the top 6 guys as well as the tight end room. You have a guy like Michael Smith going into his sophomore year, but he misses all of spring ball. Brady Hunt's coming back after a lower body injury 2 years ago, getting acclimated to the program last year, and he comes off a phenomenal spring. Had some extra reps, of course, because Smith wasn't out there. And from talking to some of the players, some of the reports that I put out throughout the spring, he was a guy that was Mr. Reliable. And I'm not saying he has the same skill sets by any means like we saw last year with Josh Simon. But at the same time, too, what did we see last year with Sellers? His safety blanket was a tight end. Now, I'm not saying that will be the case this year. There's a lot of talented young wide receivers. But being able to find a tight end that Sellers is comfortable with, could that be Hunt? Could Hunt put more pressure on Smith than some people might think? I think that's certainly something you have to pay attention to as we head into fall camp.
Mike Uva hanging out with us from Gamecock Central, talking about his projected 2 deep. We started with the offense. Defensively, there's a lot more going on here, man, obviously, than last year. I thought the Brandon Ceci thing was interesting. You have him in the 2 deep, starting a corner, but also being the backup nickel. We have Kilgore at nickel, but Kilgore would drop back to safety possibly because, again, Nick Eamon-Warry's in the NFL. There's a lot of moving pieces and parts in that defensive backfield for a defensive backfield that is bringing back 3 dudes.
No question about it, and I've been adamant on it that the big thing with Kilgore is that he is a guy that, despite, I know Shane Beamer came out and said, we don't want to move him back there, or we might probably not. I got to be careful. I'll get yelled at if I say that. But you know what I mean is that they weren't looking to do that. And I know Chris and Wes interviewed him, and that's where some of that came out. And then you had Clayton White, and he's been talking about it on record that he's open to the idea of at least exploring. I say that because there's not any miscommunication between the two. I think in a perfect world, you would like to keep Kilgore at that nickel spot simply because, he's a guy that had 5 interceptions last year. That's not an easy position to teach by any means. But having said that, you bring in a guy like, Cisse, and he did exactly what you were hoping for in the spring, which was not only, create some more competition in that cornerback room, but he made you feel a little bit better about playing nickel simply because he has that experience. So it allows you now to go into fall camp and say, okay, where is Vakari Swain going to be at? Because he was probably a player that heading into spring camp, you would expect, okay, he's going to probably be competing for a starting job. Doesn't participate during the spring. And then you look at the safety room. Pete Williams did some good things last year. So that's when DQ Smith couldn't go. Of course, he replaced Nick Emanwori in the second half of the fifth goal once Emanwori pulled himself out of the game. So you have some talent and experience in certain spots, but I think what it comes down to is what makes you feel most comfortable. You feel most comfortable keeping Kilgore at nickel and having Cisse go over, and if you do that, then you have three corners right there. Three corners that I certainly think you can rotate and play plenty, and certainly as we've seen throughout Torian Gray's tenure here at South Carolina, he wants at least three. In an ideal world, you'd love to have four corners that you can rotate, but it would be your three. And I think that is, at least right now, the most realistic thing to happen.
Mike, you've been hanging out with us, Gamecock Central, talking about his projected depth chart that he put out on Gamecock Central to the offense, and then today the defense dropped. All right, so defensively, another spot where, everybody's pretty much gone is at linebacker. Besides, J.R. Johnson, who I like to call Fred, besides J.R., who seems like a no-brainer to step into a starting spot, when you've got some other guys coming through the portal, Jerron Willis is still on the team. We forget about him. He brought some nice pass rush 2 years ago. How do you think the linebacker room going into the summer is going to shake out?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm glad you mentioned Willis, because talking to people, not just even during the spring, but, throughout these last couple of weeks, he's a guy that this coaching staff is very, very high on. I think you think back to last year because of some of the additions that South Carolina was able to add via the transfer portal. A guy like Willis got lost in the shuffle a little bit. But because of that, from talking to people inside that building, he not only, one, handled it like a pro, but number two, he has a chip on his shoulder like you wouldn't believe. And I think those are the things that excite not only the coaching staff, but some of his teammates that I've spoken with as well. So when I looked at the top four, in terms, and then we know when it comes from a personnel standpoint, it can all vary, right? South Carolina is playing a 4-2-5. You're going to have two linebackers out there. If they're playing a 3-3-5, there's going to be another linebacker out there. So, Fred Johnson aside, I would say Sean Murphy is a guy that had a phenomenal spring. They were very high on him going into spring ball, but he did a lot of good things coming out, and I think he's someone right now that could certainly find himself in the starting lineup. The other transfer, Justin, he did some good things this spring. He'll be competing with Murphy, certainly for a starting role. And then, like I mentioned, Willis. So those are my four linebackers, I'd say, right now. But, again, based on personnel, things can vary. But there's going to be some great competition. I think the thing with Willis that excites me the most is the fact that he can give you some disruption off the edge. He's a really good pass rusher, and I think that would be certainly something that South Carolina would capitalize in when they would go into a 3-3-5 look.
Mark, you've been hanging out with us from Gamecock Central talking his projected too deep for South Carolina. We'll look at the defense right now. Speaking of pass rushing, the edge, you lose this guy named Kyle Kennard. Dylan Stewart obviously is back. A lot of expectation on Stewart. At the end of the day, though, right now, if you're projecting out, who's starting on the other side at edge besides Stewart?
Brian Thomas Jr., the same man that if you asked me a year ago heading into the offseason who I felt was going to be on the opposite side of Stewart, it was Brian Thomas Jr. And then, some guy named Kyle Kennard came in, wins the Nagurski Award, and, you can understand why Kennard ended up getting the start. But, Thomas is a guy that has quietly over the last couple of seasons improved, and we've seen sparks of it during spring games over the last couple of years. But here's a player that last season played in all 12 games, 23 tackles, 6.5 tackles for a loss, 4.5 sacks. 4.5 sacks. This was a guy that did a lot of good things, but he was playing as the number 3 edge player. So the question now becomes, especially once you lose the talent that they lost, not just with Kennard, but the over 1,500 snaps in that defensive tackle room, you need players to step up on the D-line, because guess what's going to happen? offenses are going to key in on Stewart, and you need other players to be able to disrupt the offensive line to be able to cause some pressure. And I think that's one reason why I think Brian Thomas can have, I don't want to say inflated stats, but I think his stats could be a little bit more impressive than some people think they could be, simply because he's not going to be the focal point, certainly going into the year. And I think he's a guy that can certainly surprise a lot of people because he has the talent, he has the pedigree, he has the DNA. I mean, his father played for a decade. He understands what it takes to be a very successful player.
Mike Uva with us, Gamecock Central. Last question for you in our final minute. Interior defensive line, you got a bunch of guys who need to step up, whether it's from the portal or are already here on the roster. What do you got interior defensive line?
I'll tell you what, I really like some of the things that we saw this spring with Goodwine. I thought he did some good things last year, of course, as well. And then, of course, Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy. I mean, it feels like he was one of the biggest, if you want to call it winners. I put that like in air quotes because I don't know what other way to say it. He was a guy that his stock skyrocketed in the spring. So at a position that certainly, as we talked about, you need to replace a lot of talent. They used a lot of different defensive tackles last season. You need to be able to find a way for a D tackle to step up, because I don't care if Dylan Stewart's on one side. He can be an All-American all he wants. If he's not able to get some help from the defensive tackle room, they're not going to do anything this season up front.
Mike Uva, Gamecock Central. Also, now, are you on skates? Are you ready to go out there and skate around the rink, or what?
My hockey days, I retired right before they picked teams. My feet were too cold. My dad called me a wimp, but we used to put a hockey rink up in the side of the yard. But I'll tell you what, Gamecock Club hockey games, you definitely want to go check them out if you haven't. You can get 2 beers for like $5. Good deals, rowdy crowd, and some fun hockey where players are always going to be pushing guys around because it's club. So go check it out over at the Plex if you haven't in Irmo.
All I know is I heard 2 beers for $5. I'm in.
There you go.
I'm in, bud. All right, good talking with you like always, Mike. We appreciate you. That's Mike Uva, Gamecock Central. Firehouse Sub text the hour next, 803-404-6100 here on the Halftime Show on the Game. (803-875-MENS), Men's Clinic of South Carolina. We talk about it a lot. Look, being a guy and getting older, things stop working the way they used to. You're not as strong at the gym. You can't lift like you used to. You don't bounce back from working out like you used to. You don't sleep like you used to. You can't remember things like you used to. Your life drive, whether it's professional, sexual, personal, whatever, you just don't have any drive anymore. You're like, eek. And this could be just low testosterone. That's it. One way to find out, you call 803-875-MENS. You set up a free confidential consultation at the men's clinic. Tell them your story. If the folks there think it could be low T, they'll do lab work. If it comes back low testosterone, they'll put you on a plan specifically designed for you to get back to feeling you again. Call the men's clinic of South Carolina. Feel better. Get our Firehouse Sub text of the hour in here, 803-404-6100. Halftime show. Terry Ford rolling it today. Tyler will be back tomorrow. Dave's here off a vacation. Kale's going to run the ship here in a little bit. He's gotten pretty solid at it. By the way, I'll tell you a quick story about Kale, Dave. You'll like this. All right, so Kale comes in here during a break, talking to me about something, and he's using a little colorful language as he's doing it. And then he comes back in, and he goes, by the way, I'm really sorry for my language. And I was like, hey, bleep and watch your bleeping mouth when you're bleeping around us. Don't be bleeping stupid. He got the message. He's okay.
The main thing for him to remember is keep your mic down.
Exactly. Save me from me. Okay, it was funny. He came in, he was like, I'm really sorry. Because, again, he's just starting out. He's, he doesn't, wants to be respectful. I appreciate that. And I said, Kale, it's great you're like this. I used to be like that at one time. Look at me now.
You know, my cousin beat me up one time because I wouldn't say the word damn.
Really? And he beat you up? Why didn't you say the word? Why didn't you say the word so you saved a whooping, Dave?
Because I was a good little boy that went to church every Sunday.
Look at you now. You're a mess.
No, it's...
Wow, look what radio did to you. You were a good young boy who never cussed and went to church every Sunday, and now look at you. Look what radio did to you.
I hadn't darkened the doors of a church in 30 years.
That's because what radio did to you.
Exactly.
I blame radio. Radio just breeds degenerates. That's what it does.
I had to run the church service on Sunday morning.
Well, that's good enough, though. See? You got a little something. You got a little faith. Yeah, I told Kel, you're hanging out with us, man. You're all right. Don't worry about it. You're okay. We'd worry about you if you didn't cuss, Kel.
Nothing you could say or do that will shock us.
Right. Well, think about it. Tyler, in 3 years, I can count on one hand the cuss words I've heard from Tyler in 3 years. Every now and then, when he does cuss, you go, wow. Woo.
Oh,
that was interesting. The worst he had ever cussed was over an engineering issue last year. I know you're not shocked by that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, so it was pretty funny. It was pretty good. All right, Firehouse Subtext, the hour, 803-404-6100. Texter said, yes, I am really excited to see R.J. Johnson starting a linebacker for Carolina. And I'm also excited about all the freshman wide receivers. I'm hoping at least one maybe can step up and either be a starter or a big difference maker. Yeah, I mean, that's two of the things this year. I mean, there are many things this year, obviously, you need to look at because this football team, despite the fact it has all of these expectations, you still are replacing a lot of guys. I mean, dudes ran off to the NFL from that defense, many. You're replacing everybody in the, on the defensive line except Dylan Stewart. You're replacing all the linebackers. You're replacing a starting corner and a starting safety. I mean, it's a lot, man. It really is. So there's opportunity everywhere. The ironic part is the texter is interested in the freshman wide receivers, and there are 4 experienced wide receivers coming back. So that freshman group of wideouts coming in, that Mike Furry did a great job recruiting, all have a lot of potential. So it is exciting to see if any of those guys can really pop and play, if not just like Mazeo Bennett last year. Bennett had 30 grabs last season. So maybe you get a freshman wide receiver or 2, step up and be consistently productive. We'll see. But RJ, or like I like to call him, Fred Johnson, physical ability like nobody's business. Straightforward. David Ayers here. Kale punching the buttons for us as we run till 3 o'clock. All right, we're going to get to the football, obviously. An interesting NFL trade happened just a little while ago. But a lot of times we want to get to the important stories, the breaking news stories that matter in our world. And we just got a breaking news story from David Dare. Now, Dave lives, we won't say where, but Dave lives in an apartment complex. And Dave has been talking about why nobody's been at the pool. Because, Dave, you've been quite annoyed about this pool situation.
I was off all week.
Mm-hmm.
It's hot as heck.
Mm-hmm.
I figure I'll go to the pool and, maybe hit up on some girls.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you're walking around there,
No one at the pool all week long. Completely empty.
Uh-huh.
No one there.
No one there. And I mean, you're ready. You've got your Speedo. You're set to go hit the pool.
I go, gates locked. I'm like, what?
Mm-hmm.
3 o'clock in the afternoon, gates locked. What's going on here?
So you're upset.
Yeah.
So you found out why you can't go to the pool, Dave. Read the announcement. Of course, we're not going to say what apartment complex, but read the announcement on why no one's been at the pool.
Yeah, I got an email. It says, residents, please be advised, community pool will be closed due to an incident that requires immediate cleaning and maintenance.
Wow, Dave, what kind of incident could cause such cleaning and maintenance that you have to shut the pool down all week?
We have been informed of the presence of fecal matter in the pool. And in accordance with health and safety standards.
So, Dave, you got your answer.
Got my answer.
Got your answer, Dave.
And now I don't know, even if they clean it, that I want to go.
I was going to say, do you ever want to go to the pool ever again?
Yeah, probably not.
Because it's like anything. You can clean that. But knowing what was in there, can you ever go back in?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
No.
Well, now you have your answer, Dave.
Do other people
Aren't you glad they locked it? Because you could have gone and jumped in there not knowing what was going on, Dave.
I thought about climbing the fence going, hey.
That's right.
Hot out here.
I want to jump in the pool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have gone well. Who was the first? I wonder who the poor schlub was that found
like, what's that hitting my back? Oh, geez. Oh, gosh.
Or maybe you found after you jumped in.
Yeah.
This is not good, Dave.
And you wonder who did it.
Yeah, I mean, well, here's my last thing on this. What drives you to think that's a good idea?
I don't know.
At what point do you, and you say there's not a lot of little kids running around, so I mean, my first thought was some little kid just, do what little kids do when you have a diaper, right?
I could see that, yeah.
But if you don't have any little kids of that age, then it's like, what possessed you as either a teenager or a grown adult? You know what? I think I'm going to why get up and go to the bathroom? I can just go here in the pool.
I'm enjoying the pool. Just do it here.
It's watery.
Right. That's right.
What point does that become a good idea in your head?
I don't know.
And how many beers do you have to make that a good idea?
Well, you can't drink at the pool either.
That's true. That's right. You told me there's no more alcohol.
Yeah. I don't know what happened there. I didn't get it memo.
Which could have led to this incident.
Could have.
Once you ban alcohol from the pool, it's all bets are off, man.
Exactly.
People just start going sideways.
Yep.
And it could end up with this problem.
Yeah. The day it opened, there was alcohol. I saw a lot of guys out there. Hey, come join the party.
Well, I mean, once you take away the alcohol, maybe somebody went, well, I'll show you.
The suspicion falls on those guys.
Take away my booze. Watch this. Thank you, Dave, for that update. We all feel better now.
Anytime.
Thank you, Dave. All right, we do a lot of football, among other things, in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors here on The Game. Real quick, NFL had an interesting trade, just because it's got names. Jalen Ramsey, corner for the Miami Dolphins, who has been a 3-time All-Pro, a phenomenal corner in his prime. Ramsey, basically, the Dolphins and Ramsey came to an agreement that the Dolphins would trade Jalen Ramsey. Ramsey didn't go in asking for a trade. I guess they just agreed, this would probably be the best thing for all parties in general if we dealt you. So the Dolphins did trade Jalen Ramsey and tight end Geno Smith, who had a really nice season last year, both to the Pittsburgh Steelers. In exchange, the Steelers send their former All-Pro safety, Minkah Fitzpatrick, back to Miami. Fitzpatrick started his career with the Dolphins. It was a first-round pick. And then got traded to the Steelers because Fitzpatrick wasn't happy with the new defense Brian Flores put in back when Flores took over as the head coach in Miami back in the day. So now Minkah Fitzpatrick is going back to Miami. And the Dolphins trade Jalen Ramsey and Geno Smith. And part of this, obviously, there's going to be some financial stuff going on here for Miami. Geno Smith won a new deal because Smith had such a good year last season. Ramsey, obviously not the player he used to be. Still is going to have a nice cap hit. Minkah Fitzpatrick, not the player he used to be either, doesn't make the money Jalen Ramsey does. So as much of this is financial, yeah, it could be. Could be some cap gymnastics of basically trading two guys who aren't as good as they had previously been when they were really good, and then you throw a tight end in who had the best year of his career and wanted to get compensated for it. And remember, the Dolphins have had to pay Tua, and they pay some other folks. So the Miami Dolphins, once you start paying your quarterback, you start looking at the salary cap realities, right? And the Dolphins' 2025 cap space was almost $14 million, between $13 and $14 million. And Jalen Ramsey, he was taking up cap space. Also, cap space would be taken up by, Geno Smith. And Tua Tagovailoa and Tyreek Hill combined are eating up $63 million of cap with the Dolphins. So when you look at that, plus the idea they have about $38 million of dead money sitting around, the Dolphins, that's a thing. And you have to take a look at what you can do to move money and move salary, not just in 2025, but moving forward. And you're a team that last year missed the playoffs after making the playoffs, so you kind of took a step backwards. So you're even looking at that as well. That's two guys taking up a lot of cap space. And the Dolphins have to, move around that. And now that you move Jalen Ramsey out, you have Jordan Brooks making $11 million, Bradley Chubb 12, Zach Seiler's making 12, Jalen Phillips at 13. So you got some other guys hitting over $10 million in the cap that, again, Bradley Chubb can't stay healthy. Jordan Brooks, to me, I don't think he's worth that kind of money. That's just my thought. But so Miami's got to start, maneuvering a little bit, and you bring in Minkah Fitzpatrick, who's not getting the cap, taking up the cap space that a Jalen Ramsey is. So how much of this was just, we've got to figure out our cap? If you're the Dolphins and you got to move some pieces around to make more sense when it comes to what you're doing with the cap. Minkah Fitzpatrick, much less cap hit, $8 million cap hit, $50 million cap hit right now, and that might get moved around a little bit before it's all said and done. So the cap hit of Ramsey at 26 compared to, not that high, but it's a little bit higher than Minkah Fitzpatrick. Then you throw in Geno Smith, who wanted to get paid and got $12 million. You're saving money by bringing in Minkah Fitzpatrick, even though Minkah Fitzpatrick's not the player he used to be either. Anyway, it feels like this is a maneuver of Miami trying to figure out how to get some more cap space, not just this year, but in the future as well, as you start moving pieces, because you have Tua Tagovailoa and Tyreek Hill taking up a lot of your cap space. All right, South Carolina, we talked to Mike Yuva about his projected depth chart with the Gamecocks. No real super surprises there from Mike. Even though there's a lot of opportunity on defense, it feels like there are guys either on the 2 deep or right outside the 2 deep that could be part of the rotation defensively. On offense, really what you're looking at is the interior of the offensive line. And what's going to happen with Rashul Faison at running back? Can any of those freshman wide receivers step up to go with your veterans coming back from last year that you're hoping are going to get better a year of more experience? Defensively, you know, that's where a lot of the holes are you need to fill. You have Dylan Stewart, great. You have, you know, DQ Smith in the back end, Judge Collier in the back end, Jalen Kilgore in the back end. Besides that, you're replacing a lot of pieces. And as the other post Mike put up that I thought was interesting was his 10 questions with 10 Sundays to go until week 1 for South Carolina. And Mike did bring up replacing last year's defensive production. And, you know, Mike says of the 13 Gamecocks who played the most defensive snaps last year, 9 of those 13 are gone. And you got to replace them. And when you look at that projected 2 deep on defense, Monkel Goodwine and Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy, Goodwine, a former 4-star recruit, Brownlow-Dindy, a former 5-star recruit. I mean, these guys have high ceilings because there was a lot of potential coming out of high school for both these dudes. Goodwine helped out last year, you know, being part of the defensive line rotation. He played in all 13 games. Brownlow-Dindy looked excellent in the spring. We'll see where that goes because there's even more upside on Dindy than there is Goodwine. And then you have Nick Barnett and Devontae Miles. There's a lot of people who like Devontae Miles thinking his numbers, I believe at Bowling Green off the top of my head, Miles can be a better player than he was at Bowling Green. And Nick Barrett, of course, last year didn't play at all. They preserved the red shirt for Barrett. This year, Nick Barrett will be a big part of the rotation for South Carolina. So those are guys that are going to take advantage of their opportunities, as should Brian Thomas at the edge or Desu or JT Gear. JT Gear is very interesting because he had been productive at Syracuse, and he hasn't stayed healthy at South Carolina. Desmond Umeazulu, you know, I always hear this one, looks like a football player, looks like a pass rusher. Well, so far, just it hasn't popped yet, but Desu's going to get his chance this year. And obviously so is Brian Thomas, who had 4.5 sacks last year. At linebacker, R.J. Johnson, chance to step up. Tron Willis, 2 years ago, remember South Carolina reinvented their defense, that guy got some serious heat on the pass rushers, or on quarterbacks, I should say, as a pass rusher. Justin Okoronkwo from Alabama, the transfer portal guy, and Sean Murphy, the other transfer portal dude from Florida. Both these guys have high ceilings as well. But again, not proven. Just like, you know, Brownlow-Dindy, not proven. Goodwine as a starter, not proven. The whole linebacker core, we'll see. So it's very interesting stuff in that 2 deep from Mike Yuva, especially on the defensive side of the ball. All right, a lot of football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Is the NFL colluding? Or have they been? We'll get into that next here on the Halftime Show. Kale's running the show. Dave's here. Don't go swimming at Dave's pool. We'll talk more football next on the game. Halftime show, we yap football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors here on the game. Interesting little story. Pablo Torre got this going here recently, doing a podcast episode regarding the collusion ruling that landed in the NFL. The NFL won, despite the fact that the judge basically said there is something here when it comes to possible collusion after the Deshaun Watson contract. That the NFL just suggested, hey, you guys, you owners have to be careful about the guaranteed money you're giving out because you don't want to put yourself in a bad spot with the salary cap for future roster building. You guys just might want to be careful. You know what I'm saying? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Careful. That guy, like when you were young, that older dude in the neighborhood would give you the little gun thing. Be careful. But there's no proof that the NFL told teams not to give out guaranteed money. Because, again, you can't tell them what to do, but you can suggest it. And I think the NFL did that, sure. Truck Stop Jimmy in Cleveland just did, it was the stupidest contract you could give out, just all guaranteed money, putting you in a bad salary cap situation for years. I don't care how good Deshaun Watson was. This isn't second guessing. When the Browns gave this contract to Watson, I was like, yeah. Now, this is before everything that's happened with Watson in Cleveland, obviously. I was like, yeah, this guy's a hell of a player. And, the off-the-field stuff's the off-the-field stuff, but you are really handcuffing yourself when it comes to salary cap because you're giving too much money to one person. So, to me, that was the big problem. Then Deshaun Watson goes off and is awful and is injured. Either he's on the field and he's awful, or he's injured and he's off the field. It's been a disaster for Cleveland in every way possible, obviously. But the contract itself is even worse now because the player isn't rolling at an all-pro type level or even a franchise quarterback type level. But after the Deshaun Watson contract was given out, I guarantee you there were folks in the NFL going, what has shortstop Jimmy lost his mind? Because where the NFL is different from Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NHL, is the NFL very rarely gives out guaranteed contracts. It's a salary cap. You have X amount of money guaranteed, but the rest of your contract is kind of not really a contract. It's just set up for cap purposes. Usually all these contracts are 2 or 3 years, and they're going to get redone every 2 or 3 years. So you can kick the salary cap can down the road, so to speak. And the NFL doesn't want to change that model. It's a collision sport. So you might be writing a lot of checks for guaranteed money of guys who don't play anymore because they got dismembered. And 2, the NFL likes things just the way they are. They like it. They got a hard cap. There's very few guaranteed contracts. They don't want to screw around. And really, the NFL model of a hard cap has worked because a lot of different franchises have had their chance to be good and get in the playoffs. But the ironic part is the NFL might have the most dynasties in the last 20 years. The sport with the hardest cap is the one with the dynasties. New England, Kansas City. Ironic. But I could see collusion absolutely in the NFL. No doubt. But of course, the NFL can't admit that because now you're breaking the collective bargaining agreement with the players. And Mike Florio put up a post today, matter of fact, this morning. No one's talking about this in the NFL. Not the league, not the Players Association, nothing. And those connected to the situation have nothing to say either. Agent Mark Rogers, who represents Russell Wilson, or Eric Burkhart, who represents Kyler Murray, declined comment. Those guys were mentioned in the story. The other one was Lamar Jackson. Other agents have declined to speak to, according to Florio. Multiple agents explaining off the record there's no reason to make an enemy of the NFL or the NFLPA when their main business activities require having a working relationship with both sides. One agent said, I've got mouths to feed. Those guys don't forget. Players aren't talking. Again, you would think the players would talk, but they are concerned about reprisals when their contracts are being negotiated. Here's a quote from a longtime agent, Peter Schaefer. It's clear the arbitrator confirmed teams colluded against guaranteed money, something we as agents have known they have done since the advent of free agency. The real question has always been, how do we create and force change? Well, here's what it is. You got to do it in your CBA. It's very simple. The players have to go in with the idea we want guaranteed contracts. We are going to go into this CBA with the idea, how do we get closer to guaranteed contracts? But then what do you have to give up? And can you get a majority of the NFL Players Association to buy into that when, remember, most of this league is year-to-year jobbers who are backups, special teamers. Rosters are big. Think about how big a roster is in the NFL. You have 22 starters. And of those 22, only X amount of those 22 are looked at as keepers or upper-level starters or guys who are going to make gobs of guaranteed money. The percentage of the haves in the NFL with players is so different from the percentage of have-nots. So you've got that dynamic within the NFLPA. So getting this accomplished would be very difficult. Plus, you're going to get pushback hard from the owners who do not want guaranteed contracts, period, but put up with the few they do put up with because these are higher-level players. The true one-percenters in the league. So you got all this going on. Is collusion right? No, of course, it breaks the CBA, but it happens. We saw it in baseball years ago when they were trying to hold down salaries. I believe under the Peter Ueberroth era, when Ueberroth was the commissioner. But anyway, that's just the way this thing goes. And it's going to take a strong push from a union. It could involve a lockout. It could involve a lot of stuff. A strike. And do you want to do that when your league is far and away the healthiest of any of the other sports? And then you're going to have the lower-level players crossing picket lines because they need the money to eat. They are year-to-year people with year-to-year salaries. They don't have big guaranteed money in the bank that they can sit through a strike or a lockout. So that's what you're looking at. And that's why this collusion story is the NFL and the NFLPA just want to go away. But very interesting stuff. But do I think the NFL was colluding after the Deshaun Watson deal? Absolutely. You're telling me you're not going to give Lamar Jackson a huge contract with huge guaranteed money? Teams like the Atlanta Falcons. Remember, the Falcons had nothing at quarterback. Less than nothing. They should have went and got Uncle Rico, matter of fact. And he would have been an improvement. But the Falcons didn't make an offer to Lamar Jackson. Not legit. Arthur Blank was like, well, we're kind of concerned about his injury history. So since Lamar signed his new deal, I think Lamar has played pretty much 90-some% of the Ravens snaps. And by the way, won an MVP award and really could have won. And really, his numbers were better last year than the year before when he won MVP. But the league almost treated it like Michael Jordan. We can't give this guy the MVP award like every year. Hell, give it to Josh Allen. He doesn't have one. And Josh Allen, don't get me wrong, was really good last year too. But anyway, do I believe the NFL has colluded? Sure. Is anything going to happen? No. All right, we talk a lot of football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Mike, you've brought up 10 questions about Gamecock football. We're going to take a look at a couple of those next here on the halftime show on the game. Halftime show. Terry Ford, glad you can be hanging. As we are cooking this baby up until 3 on the game. Check us out at the Game TV Radio, our YouTube channel, or just if you're listening on the app that you can get from Google, Apple, whatever the case, just download that baby, listen anywhere. All right, so Mike, you've put up 10 questions as we're sitting 10 weeks until the opener against Virginia Tech. And there's a bunch of things in here. We hit a couple during the day here. You know, we talked earlier about Lenora Sellers getting better from the pocket as a quarterback. Also, how important it is to get the interior of the offensive line where it needs to be. Replacing all that defensive production you had from the year before. And also the personnel packages. You know, we've seen 4-2-5. That's the base defensive package. We saw the 3-3-5 a couple years ago. We saw South Carolina use kind of both of them in 2024. And I guess it depends on what's better personnel-wise. Are you going to be better up front on the defensive line? You have linebackers need to get on the field, so you want to put a third linebacker there, blah, blah, blah. So we'll find out, and I guess defensive personnel will dictate that for Clayton. Another one is, and this is number 4 on Mike's list, a new safety blanket for Lenora Sellers. Last year was Josh Simon. Josh Simon emerged as the go-to receiver for Sellers. First time a non-wide receiver led South Carolina in receptions. Get this, Mike writes this. It was the first time since 2002 that a non-wide receiver led the Gamecocks in catches, and that guy was Ryan Brewer. Whatever happened to that guy? Anyway, so that was our buddy Brew back over 20 years ago. Now, I agree with Mike. Mike says here in the piece he thinks with all this talent that South Carolina has a wide receiver, that there's no way a wide receiver doesn't lead the team in receptions, whether it's Nick Harbor continues his improvement, whether it's Mazeo Bennett, you know, stepping up after a nice freshman year. Could it be Jared Brown staying healthy and becoming more of the player he was at Coastal? Who knows? But I agree with Mike. I don't think a tight end, and Michael Smith has a lot of physical ability, and last year as a freshman, you know, had some catches. But I think that the wide receiver room steps up this year. And Rocket Sanders, I believe, was the second leading receiver. Or third. Rocket Sanders was used much more as the year went along. If Lenora Sellers didn't have Josh Simon, he'd go to Rocket Sanders at times. So that will be interesting to see how this plays out. Who will be the go-to guy? In a perfect world, Lenora Sellers drops back and just reads the defense, and the first open guy he spins the rock to. That's really when your passing game is humming, is you drop back, oh, you're open, here, catch it. But wide receiver-wise, I feel like this team's in a much better place this year than this time last year. Also, and Mike has this at number 6, playing towards your strengths. And Mike talks about Oscar Attaway feels like the starting running back on this football team. And the one thing the coaches like about Attaway is he's solid at all 3 phases that you need as a running back. Just basic stuff, like A, running the football, obviously. 2, catching the ball out of the backfield. And 3, in pass protection as a blocker. Now, again, do I think Attaway is, you know, obviously not a game breaker? He's not one broken tackle away from going 75 yards. But Attaway is a productive runner, solid out of the backfield, and good in pass pro. And with this year's team, especially if you do ever saw Faison, could I see Faison becoming the RB1? Yeah, that could happen. But then Attaway would still get a lot of touches. But if there is going to be no Faison, then obviously Attaway is your clear number 1. And then you've got other guys who have potential and ability stacking right up behind Attaway. But that also will be something to keep an eye on, is how the running back room plays itself out, especially with no Faison. Tyler and I have been yapping about this ever since last year, the kicking situation in South Carolina. Alex Herrera last year his overall percentage was okay, but he missed some important kicks. Let's just be honest. Dude missed some kicks that were quite vital in close games. So now you fast forward. Who's going to be your kicker? Could be your punter. Mason Love looked like the best placed kicker in the spring. He's the punter, most likely. Hey, if he's your best kicker and best punter, guess what? He's your kicker and punter. It's as simple as that. Shane said it, in the offseason, a perfect world, you have two guys for those two jobs. But if Mason Love is clearly the best guy for both, then guess what? Mason Love's your kicker and your punter. To me, it's just that simple. We'll see where it goes in the summer camp. But to me, that's the way this is going to have to go. And, 2 years ago, South Carolina, with a lot of expectation, played a North Carolina team that also had some expectation going into 2023. It was a tough night for the Gamecock offensive line and for South Carolina in general. Spencer Rattler ran for his life. North Carolina had, I lost track, 47 sacks, it felt like. And the Gamecocks got beat, and the season unraveled with an offensive line that just didn't perform well and was beat up and injured. Team goes 5-7. Virginia Tech doesn't look like a team as good as North Carolina was 2 years ago on paper. Virginia Tech underachieved last year. Everybody thought they were a dark horse to win the ACC, and they barely finished 500. I think they got worked in their bowl game. Well, Coach Prine there at Virginia Tech is on the hot seat. He's got to win. They bring back Drones, the quarterback, and some other pieces, but on paper, South Carolina just looks like the better squad and should win the game. But to Mike's point, this is not a cupcake. Like Mike said, you're not playing Salami State. How many people enjoy great feelings of beating Salami State? That mascot will be fun to see run around. Just saying. But you got Virginia Tech, who, again, you look better than on paper. But Virginia Tech is not that first week cupcake at all. And they got some first-year coordinators. Again, you got a coach who's fighting for his job with Prine, and we'll just see where it goes. But it's not, an easy walk in week one. Remember, though, Old Dominion was supposed to be an easy walk last year. That was not easy. So you never know. But Virginia Tech, you figure, will give you a much stronger fight than Old Dominion. But again, you are, if you look at these two teams, you look like the better team. I thought it was very interesting from Mike. Also, Mike talks about the safety situation or the defensive backfield, looking at the nickel. Jalen Kilgore was excellent playing nickel in 2024. Had 5 picks. You feel like you'd want to keep him there, right? But you do have Brandon Cisse, who can play nickel and corner. Cisse's a dude. Make no mistake. At corner and nickel, guy can play. It almost feels like you're better off having Cisse at the other corner opposite of Judge Collier. Obviously, Vakari Swain's going to get some snaps and some run. Keeping Kilgore at the nickel, I think, would make sense. And then Peyton Williams, Peyton Williams, when he has had to play, has been all right. He really has. He's been solid to good. Had to jump in the bowl game when Nicky Manwari pieced out after halftime. And Peyton Williams he held his own. He's held his own at times. So I guess it'll end up being like this to me. Is Vakari Swain, Peyton Williams, how do they play during summer camp? Because you can put Cisse at nickel, drop Kilgore at safety, keep Kilgore at nickel, put Cisse at corner. Out of Swain and Williams, who seems to step up the best where you can move these pieces around? I think that's really where it's going to come down to. That's just me. All right, football, more football. The 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. We're tweaking the lineup here at the game, starting on July 7th, moving some people around. All the same people, just a few in different spots. We'll have that, and we'll tell you more about that tomorrow. But that's what we're going to do on July 7th. Dave's not going anywhere. Dave stays in the same spot. You know why? Because the bus line. Because the buses Dave has to take, he can only take those buses at a certain time. That and he's got to clean the pool, too. All right, Firehouse Sub text the hour next, 803-404-6100 halftime show till 3 on the game. Firehouse subtext of the hour, 803-404-6100. Any word on P.J. Dean yet, the interior defensive lineman who is going to be committing today either to South Carolina or Georgia? That's a 3:30 announcement. And we'll find out about that. We'll be yipping about it on the postgame show. Elijah will. Also, off the text line, fellas, that poop in the pool story was funny and disturbing all at the same time. That's got a better ring to it than Finkel Matter, Dave. Poop in the pool. Just saying. Just saying. That was, Dave, honestly, out of all the weird, kooky things in your life, that might have been the funniest thing we've talked about. Just saying. And also from the text line, 803-404-6100, talking about that trade between Pittsburgh and Miami today. Texter, you watch. It's the way the Steelers operate. Jalen Ramsey will go back to being a superstar, and Janu Smith will catch 90 balls. You know, the Steelers haven't been like that lately. I mean, I know where you're going because for a long period of time when the Steelers were the height of being the Steelers, Pittsburgh will bring a guy in and all of a sudden he's playing like, wow, where was that? It happens. But it really hasn't been like that as much lately in Pittsburgh. And a lot of people want to blame Tomlin. Look, I think Mike Tomlin's a heck of a coach. I think the thing Tomlin did, the biggest question mark to me, was when he brought in Matt Canada as the offensive coordinator or promoted Matt Canada offensive coordinator. It made no sense. I watched Matt Canada's act when he was the OC at the University of Maryland, and there's nothing special about Canada as an offensive coordinator. I didn't understand that with Mike Tomlin. That was, to me, was the biggest thing that Tomlin could control that wasn't a good idea was Canada. But a lot of it is just the front office not being able to do a good job in the drafting of players, the signing of free agents. You know, Pittsburgh they've just missed the mark in some very important spots on that football team, starting with quarterback. That's number one. The offensive line used to be a staple of the Steelers. They've had some problems with the O-line the last so many years. Just not everything Pittsburgh touches turns to gold anymore, I guess what I'm saying. So just the fact that Jalen Ramsey's going to put on Steeler gear doesn't mean he's going to become the old Jalen Ramsey again. But Ramsey was okay last year. I mean, he wasn't great. He wasn't terrible. He was all right. He just wasn't what he used to be. Minkah Fitzpatrick had a worse year than Jalen Ramsey. Minkah Fitzpatrick's still serviceable, but not the player he used to be. Janu Smith might be an interesting piece to this trade. Again, Smith caught 81 passes last year for Miami. Now, Pat Freiermuth is a really good young tight end in Pittsburgh. But the Steelers, Arthur Smith loves some of those two tight end sets from his days with the Titans as the offensive coordinator. And you're putting Freiermuth out there. You got Janu Smith. You got DK Metcalf. You might be able to do some interesting stuff offensively for the Steelers. Again, your offensive line's got to be good. So, I mean, there's a lot to it, but interesting stuff with the Steelers. But no, not everyone now automatically gets better putting on Steeler gear like they used to. I know where you're going, Texter. So we appreciate the text messages all the time, 803-404-6100. Our Firehouse Subtext hour. We'll get one more coming up in the next hour as well. Now, what's trending at 2, we're going to drag our buddy Elijah Campbell in here at 2:15. A lot of goings on in the NBA. Free agency is hit. Who's going to go off and sign a big deal? Who's opting into their contract? Who's opting out? A lot of stuff going on in the NBA. We'll yap with Elijah about it because Elijah and I, we love yapping about basketball. So that's coming up. What's trending at 2, sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions. Here on the halftime show, we go to 3 on the game. What's trending at 2? Waiting for P.J. Dean's announcement at 3:30. The four-star interior defensive lineman from the state of North Carolina will be making his commitment announcement. So we will find out if it's going to be South Carolina or Georgia, because that's really the two at the end, South Carolina or Georgia. Wes Mitchell, during the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, said he feels like the lean is South Carolina right now. We'll find out. That is today at 3:30, and obviously once that hits, Elijah will be talking about that on the postgame show. Jay's out this week. He wants to go hang out and do vacation with his family for some weird reason. So Jay will be back next Monday. And, of course, next Monday, July 7th, we're going to be kind of like shuffling a little bit of the lineup here on the game. We'll tell you more about that tomorrow, but that is coming up, and it'll start on Monday, July the 7th. All right, Dawn Staley also in the news. The couple different things. There was just a rumor. It's always a rumor. It's unsubstantiated. There's no, like, Brian Windhorst isn't behind it from ESPN, or no one who covers the NBA is saying this is true, but for some reason, and we have to address it because it's Dawn Staley, that there's been some smoke that the New York Knicks might be interested in talking to Dawn Staley about their head coaching gig. Now, could Dawn Staley go coach in the NBA? I think she could. And do I think this world is more open to having a woman coach in the NBA? Because, I mean, years ago, dudes just wouldn't take a woman seriously as a head coach because, you know, she was female. I mean, I'm just being honest. That's the way it used to be. And, yeah, I think now as the world has moved on, we've opened our minds to, you know, not just looking at gender and holding that against someone, that I believe Dawn Staley could be successful given the roster, because, again, you're not going to pick your roster. So could she do it? Sure. Do I think men are more open to it today? Yeah. Because you got to get a buy-in. But I think Dawn Staley wants to leave South Carolina? No. Do I think she would be interested in talking about an NBA head coaching vacancy? Sure. She did a couple years ago when Portland was open, according to Staley in her book. And also, and I'm taking this from the Greenville News, Staley described both her initial thoughts about coaching in the NBA and the interview process. She says it was serious. They treated her like a real candidate, but ultimately told Staley that they were going in a different direction. Staley said this in her book: "I appreciated the consideration, but in the end, it reminded me why coaching young women remains the ideal scenario for me." Now, I'm not saying that, I mean, I believe that's what Dawn feels in her heart because she put it in the book. But she did, in her contract, leaving her new deal, there's zero buyout if she leaves for an NBA or WNBA gig. Now, I don't think she would leave for a WNBA gig. I just don't think obviously they're not going to pay her what she's getting paid at South Carolina. And look, has the WNBA grown in interest? It has. Now, I'm just being honest. It's two words: Caitlin Clark. And the WNBA, I feel there's a fight to that in some of the pockets of that league. I don't know if it's a jealousy thing, she hasn't earned it thing, whatever. Here's the deal, though. Look, you're a league that's been starving for attention. You're now getting it. Ride that bandwagon, and maybe this is the start of maybe expanding it even further by using Caitlin Clark as your instrument because of the interest in her. Then maybe people go, wow, this person can play, that person can play. Wow, these games are actually entertaining to watch. Wow, this team is good. Wow, I'm a lot more interested in the WNBA because I started by watching Caitlin Clark. I think the league just needs to get over itself and go, this right now, that's the wagon we got to hitch ourselves to. But right now, the WNBA, you're just not going to get paid as much to be a head coach there as you would at South Carolina. Dawn's the highest paid women's college basketball coach in America. She's not going to get anywhere near that in the WNBA. So unless the WNBA build some kind of specific role for Dawn Staley that helps continue on with her stature and also financially. She's not going WNBA. But the NBA, that's a different conversation because now you're a trailblazer, you're a groundbreaker, you're the first female to coach an NBA team. And I think I always have said, I think Dawn, and this is a positive, is a trailblazer, a groundbreaker, someone who wants to kick open doors for women and minorities. That would be kicking a hell of a door, wouldn't it? So I think that would be something, obviously, that would interest her, or she wants to be able to, at least talk about those scenarios because that's why it's in her contract. But the other thing is, I know there's only 30 of these gigs, but do you want to coach the Knicks? The Knicks got to the Eastern Conference Finals. Tom Thibodeau, the head coach at the time, the Knicks had a 3-year run they haven't had in decades. And then the Knicks said, well, Tibbs, we've gone about as far as we can go with you. We don't think you can get us to the NBA Finals or win us an NBA championship. We're going to go find the coach who can. So if you look at Dawn Staley, wait a minute. The Knicks got to the Eastern Conference Finals, and they fired their coach. You have tons of stability at South Carolina. The only way Dawn Staley leaves here is if Dawn Staley decides to leave here. She has autonomy to run the program the way she wants, to go after the players that she wants. And she's going to be here until she doesn't want to be here. So at the end of the day, you've got a lot of really good reasons not to go take the Knicks job. They have one of the worst owners in professional sports in James Dolan, who did get out of the way for these last couple of years, and guess what happened? The Knicks got good. But the firing of Tom Thibodeau smells like Dolan. It has the stink of Dolan, the owner, especially where it looks like the Knicks had no plan. If I'm getting rid of a coach who got me to the Eastern Conference Final, we made the playoffs 3 straight years, and this is success I haven't had in God knows how long, I'm not getting rid of him unless I full well know I can improve in the coach's office. And I've got a plan in place. Feels like the Knicks, Dolan was like, that Tibbs, we're not going to go any farther with that guy. Fire him. Who are you going to get? Oh, we'll get somebody better. Now, obviously, that's not working out yet. But could this stumbling and bumbling lead the Knicks to stop and think outside the box, maybe go in the direction of talking to Dawn Staley? Maybe. But if you're Dawn Staley, you're watching this mess, and do you want to be a part of it? Because these last 3 years in New York have made people temporarily forget that the mess the Knicks have been for decades and how awful an owner Dolan is. That's got to be in your mind, too. But then you can always say, hey, I can go give it a shot, take millions of dollars from that guy. If it doesn't work, I can go back to college. But for South Carolina, you don't want that scenario. You like what you got. You got the best women's basketball program in America, run by, right now, the best coach in America. And Gino Auriemma, obviously, might be the greatest of all time in women's basketball. But UConn hasn't been UConn until just this past year, in the last 5 seasons, while South Carolina has taken that mantle as consistently year after year being the best women's basketball program in America. That's what you got here. So if you're South Carolina, you don't want any of this. It's nice that your coach is being talked about, but you don't want to lose her. I don't think it's going to happen. Could the Knicks even talk to her? I don't know. This rumor, again, just kind of went out there. Started off with New York Knicks fans channel on YouTube or whatever, and that's the way our world works now, right? A couple of dudes talk about something, say they heard something at the barber shop or in the man cave or at work, and all of a sudden it becomes a story. It's like sliced bread runs the media. If you remember that stuff from the A&M thing with Jimbo and Nick. The other thing that came out was the WNBA is adding teams in Cleveland, Detroit, and Philadelphia. And the first thought is, oh my gosh, would Dawn Staley leave to coach the Philadelphia team in the WNBA? Again, no. They're just not going to give her the money that she needs to make that move right now, the way the WNBA is constructed. Remember, WNBA loses money. Now, they're doing better since the Caitlin Clark phenomenon showed up in the league. But they're not printing money like the NBA or any of the other professional men's leagues. They're just not. They're subsidized by the NBA, matter of fact. So I just don't think the WNBA financially can offer Dawn what Dawn makes here at South Carolina. Could I be wrong? Sure. But right now, I don't see anybody else in that league making that kind of money that Dawn Staley makes here in Columbia. But that stuff we've been yipping about, that's what's trending at 2 as well. And I just think when it's all said and done, Dawn Staley stays at South Carolina. And if she ever did leave, I think it would be for an NBA head coaching job, to truly be that trailblazer who breaks down that door and that barrier. Now, if the Knicks got serious, because Knicks have a good roster, you'd be handed a good team. I just don't know if it's going to get to that point. If we start seeing more real, like, NBA folks talking about this and reporting it, then we might have to spin back to this conversation. I will see. But anyway, that was the Dawn Staley stuff that came out here in the last couple of days. That's part of what's trending at 2 here, sponsored by Gamecock Traditions and Traditions Fine Jewelry here on the Halftime Show. A lot of NBA stuff is going on as well. A lot of NBA things. With now the offseason truly here and free agency truly kicking. So we'll be getting to some of that stuff coming up here in a little bit. One other story. If you haven't heard, Jake Retzlaff, quarterback at BYU, had a civil lawsuit against him, accusing Retzlaff of rape. This lawsuit has been dismissed according to court records. The parties jointly agreed to dismiss with prejudice, ending the case, which was filed last month. None of the parties are available for comment. Retzlaff now plans to transfer from BYU as he faces a possible 7-game suspension for violating the school's honor code by admitting to premarital sex during the legal proceedings. He has begun informing staff and teammates of his intention to leave. Retzlaff has been working out with the squad and participating in summer workouts. The team is on break until July 7th. The team's been ramping up preparation with 3 backup quarterbacks in anticipation that Retzlaff might not be available. Now, again, I don't know what this is going to mean. The lawsuit has been dropped, but Retzlaff did admit in court to having premarital sex, which, again, goes against the basically the rules of BYU. Now, Retzlaff has 1 year left of eligibility. He doesn't want to sit out 7 games in his final year of eligibility. Now, is BYU going to do something here? Because when you, again, look, I watch a lot of Matlock, so I know the legal system. When parties jointly agree to dismiss with prejudice, forget the legal mumbo-jumbo, it feels like there was a financial settlement of some sort. Because why else, if you're the party that has put forth the civil suit about, of the sexual assault, why would you just drop it? Because civil court's different than criminal court in how you have to prove things. So I feel like there was a financial settlement here made in some way, shape, or form. But Retzlaff still broke the honor code at BYU. How does BYU handle that, or did they just let him walk? Because he was good last year. He wasn't great, but he was good. He was solid. BYU had a really nice year. I guess if you're BYU, do you look at it, okay, this guy was real important to us. Let's find a way that we could make this work. Or do you go, yeah, he was good, but he wasn't great, and he did break the honor code, and he's not good enough for us to try to work around the honor code. So see you, Jake. Have a good life. We'll go get Jake from State Farm. But that's the story that just popped about the lawsuit being dropped. We're going to talk what's trending at 2, the world of the NBA, and what's going on as the offseason is officially kicked. We'll get Elijah Campbell in here. We'll yip about that next here on the Halftime Show. What's trending at 2, sponsored by Gamecock Traditions and Traditions Fine Jewelry right here on the game. What's trending at 2 is we got a lot of hoop talk, man. I mean, the NBA full-blown off-season is here. And it feels like, and we got Elijah Campbell hanging out because Elijah and I love to sit around and dork on hoops. You know, man, it feels like nothing is going to be like the Durant trade. That was like the big fish, so to speak. Someone said something. Hit the other one just in case. Who knows? Go to the other one. You never know. Find whichever one's working.
Does this one work?
Oh, there
it does.
There we go. Now slide over so you can be in the camera shot. That's how we do. You slide to your right. And we can be in the camera shot.
There we go.
There we go. Look at that.
3 works and 2 doesn't?
Who knows? We'll have to get Randy. Now Randy will have to check 2. Anyway.
That's not the first time I pressed a button for a microphone to be turned on in here and not hear myself.
And usually my first thought is, how do we break it?
We
usually it's not us.
we might have done something.
We always think it's us, but usually it's not us because we're not that smart to even break it.
I know I'm not. I just press stuff.
I just
blame Gunner.
Blame Gunner. I mean, Tyler's not here. Let's blame Tyler. Why not? Always blame the guy that's not here. All right, so I saw something. Someone had an interesting riff over the weekend that you bring in Durant, who's 37 years old. Still, by the way, a 50, 40, 90 guy.
Oh, yeah.
He might not be the Kevin Durant of 10 years ago, but he's still a bucket maker.
Right? Even at his age. 10 best shooters in the sport right now?
I think
any part of the floor?
Even now, when he's not in his prime, I would agree with that. In his prime, I have never seen a more efficient scorer in my life than Kevin Durant.
Probably the greatest scorer. And just raw scorer.
When it comes to efficiency, he could score you 28 points a game on like 10 shots.
Oh, yeah.
12 shots.
They could be threes, mid-range, getting to the rim. There's not a spot on the floor where you don't trust him shooting the basketball.
I always kind of said this about Durant, is Durant gets the ball and he looks at you, the Durant in his prime, you're guarding him, he gets the ball and he goes, okay, quick question. How do you want me to score on you? Do you want me to just right now drop a 3 in your mug? Do you want me to maybe, I don't know, go off the dribble, pull up at the free throw line and nail a mid-range? Would you like me to go left and dunk on you, right to dunk on you, or how about I go in the lane and pull up a little teardrop from 5? What do you want? Or I'll give the ball up to somebody, and then I'll cut into the lane, get the ball back, and I'll abuse you that way too.
Can catch lobs too, and
yeah, I mean
can dunk on people.
So someone said though, bring a 37-year-old in to be your go-to guy on a team that you think could win a championship because you need that 37-year-old. Just doesn't happen. And my first thought was, you're right if you just go by the blanket statement of a 37-year-old. But that 37-year-old who's still playing at a high level.
Yeah, this 37-year-old's not Gary Harris. With all due respect to my man Gary Harris, Michigan State legend, all-time Denver Nugget great.
By the way, in the Denver Nugget Hall of Fame, right? Gary Harris.
Gary Harris.
Yeah.
Love Gary a lot. But good role player. But no, this is not. I don't even think Gary Harris is close to 37 years old, but this is not.
Plays like he is, though.
It's not a role player,
no.
Right? Like this guy, it's still one of the best.
And it's
players
not like
to play
LaMarcus Aldridge, who once he got into his 30s to a certain point was nowhere near the player he used to be. This is a guy still playing at a high level despite his age. My biggest thing with Durant is, can you keep him healthy?
Oh yeah,
that's the biggest
locked
problem.
In for 80-something games. You know, and health can be an issue. He has missed some chunks over the last decade.
Yeah, ever since that Achilles, especially ever since the Achilles when he was in Golden State in the finals, he's missed some time. Mm-hmm. He's become kind of brittle. But if you're the Rockets, this is your biggest swing, right? I mean, who else were you going to get?
Oh, nobody that was going to get you from 2 seed with a bunch of young players to championship by virtue of just one acquisition. Not saying they couldn't have done it without trading for Kevin Durant, because they certainly could have. But if you want to be as efficient in terms of the moves you make in title contention, and you can do that in one move, that one move is getting Kevin Durant. Because I think the thing that kept them from being a team that advanced a lot further into the postseason was they just didn't have a go-to scorer. Now, the thing I like about the way this roster's built is you have a lot of guys that can score the basketball and do it in a variety of different ways. But when the game slows down in the postseason and you hit a wall offensively, you need somebody to make you a bucket to get you out of that wall. Jalen Green's not that player.
Yeah.
He's not. And you were asking him to be that player. And Golden State just feasted on you whenever you had to resort to Jalen Green being the one to get the lion's share of your shots.
You know who can be that player at age 37?
Kevin Durant.
Yep.
Still can.
Yes,
the guy just hasn't played
absolutely.
meaningful basketball since he's been traded for the third time. For the third time in how many years?
I mean, so I think this offseason so far, that's the big fish. I think Houston did what the only thing Houston could do. And I agree with what they did. Phoenix, what they got in return, that's another conversation for another day.
It could have gotten more.
Yeah, they're Phoenix. Enough said. LeBron James opting in on the $52 million. The poor guys have settled for $52 million this year, Elijah.
Oh, I don't know how he's going to make
he's probably going to work at the mall part-time. Are there still even malls?
Here, Target's opening.
Exactly.
Or hiring.
Be the greeter at the Walmart. LeBron, it's not so much the opting in, but the Rich Paul, his agent's comments about wanting to play for a championship. The Lakers are kind of tooling up for the future, blah, blah, blah. That felt like code word for I want to keep all my options open in case I can find a team I can jump on to get another ring. With the second apron in the NBA now, those opportunities aren't what they used to be. And I almost feel like the team that has the best chance to do that is the Lakers.
The team he's on right now.
Right.
Yeah, because he can play with Luka Doncic, who is a star in his own right. And you've seen what teams are doing in the NBA right now because of the fear of the second apron. I mean, Brian Windhorst was on Get Up last week and referred to it as Satan's jail.
I think it's hilarious.
Because teams are that terrified of it. Like normally, like Jay and I were talking about it when the Celtics, traded Drew Holiday and they traded Kristaps Porzingis, two players that were vital to them winning the title last year. Any other year, you're like, oh, they're clearing up space for a big move. But no. They're trying to avoid the second apron, and they got Anthony Simons out of it, which is a cheaper option of a guy who can score in high volume occasionally. But these teams are
not the defender Holiday is, that's for sure.
Not in the same stratosphere of the defender that Drew Holiday is right now, even at Drew Holiday's age.
And you make a good point with the second apron. It's not so much like financial penalties. It's how it basically ties you up as an organization to be able to roster build. It really does. And because of this, I think LeBron's best bet is to stay in L.A., and you and I were yipping about it off the air, get a rim protector / rim runner at center, to go with Luka, to go with Reeves, because you'll bring Reeves back, and to also, you at least have Reeves for a season, and then you have LeBron. You have the pieces to make a run in the West. Not to say you'll get back to the finals, but you can make a legit run. I think it's this, though, Elijah. I threw this at you so you could think about it. I think this is also LeBron's ego. LeBron James, as he's been playing basketball as a teenager, every team he's been on has been built around who? LeBron James.
Yeah.
This is the first time in LeBron's life, guess what? It's not being built around LeBron, it's being built around Luka. How much of this is LeBron's ego being butthurt that he's no longer the focal point of the Lakers and he wants to go somewhere else where he can still be the focal point in some way, shape, or form? You tell me.
It very well could be. And I'm kind of on the fence about that because when you opt into that deal, into that final year, you kind of lose control of where you get to go. And if there's anything we know about LeBron James and his career, he has enjoyed having the power of having teams fawn over him and give him offers and tell them what they can do for him to get him in a position to win a title, right? Every time he's moved, he has not been traded. He has been signed.
But to your point, with the second apron now, let's say LeBron opts out and he puts himself out there. Can he get $52 million at age, 55, 60, 65, right. 70? So maybe opting in is your protection, is your safety blanket, and now you go to Lakers management, I want you to explore trade options. Because we have a no-trade clause.
It very well could.
Plus,
for almost any other player, yes. But how much is that $52 million? What percentage is that of what LeBron James pulls in yearly from all of his revenue streams?
And that's the thing. But now you have your protection. And plus, you put yourself out there and you don't get the love you think. Now, guess what? LeBron's also very, very cautious about
image,
the brand of LeBron. So, all right, man, what you got coming up later? We'll bring you back in here in like 15 minutes, so you can tell us that later.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to have some hoops with you. You and your bad hammy. By the way, dude, that's bad.
Oh, the bruising's pretty gnarly.
Yeah, Wes and I just thought you were soft.
And it's getting better.
I know.
It's improved. That bruise was significantly worse like 3 days ago.
I mean, we thought you were just soft.
Yeah.
But no, you really had an injury.
Confirmed. Yeah. I hurt myself. Yeah.
Well, we apologize to you.
Yeah. Oh, hey, imaging came back. It was a tear. Yeah, I tore it up.
We'll come back and talk to Elijah in a few minutes on the handoff. Next up, the greatest day in the history of the world on the halftime show in the game. Greatest day in the history of the world. We have a pool update from Dave. In case you missed it, Dave's pool, his apartment complex, was temporarily shut down because they had to clean a little fecal matter out of the pool. Dave said it wasn't him. And Dave has video proof that it wasn't him.
I'm off all week. No one at the pool.
Couldn't go to the pool. You wondered why. You found out.
Yeah.
Fecal matter. Poopgate. Yeah, Poopgate, Dave. So
Pool.
you now have an update.
We're writing to inform you that we expect the temporary closure of the pool, which has been like 12 days now at this point, due to health reasons. We expect it now to be open July the 2nd, Wednesday, beginning at 1 p.m.
You're not off work now.
No.
So what do you care?
I know. I don't.
By the time you get home, what time's the pool close?
It's supposed to close at 9 p.m.
What time's it really closed at?
Well, I don't see anybody there.
When's the last time you got there and it was actually open?
So long ago.
Yeah.
Sure. That was like the day it opened.
You know what I think you should do to show how mad you are and angry about this?
What?
Do I need to say it? It closed the pool for 12 days. Maybe a good way to show your anger.
I think they should give me my, what do they call it? A fee you pay for all the wonderful things.
Yeah, your amenities.
Yeah. Also, the health center is closed. Been closed for a couple of weeks, too.
I wonder if there's a little fecal matter problem in the health center.
Could be.
I wonder if you got a serial pooper on the loose, Dave.
So we have no health center, no pool, and the Wi-Fi doesn't work half the time. So,
well, you got a good deal.
What I'm paying for here.
You got a good deal, Dave. You got a good deal. You know, it'd be good. You know, I think today, just to relax from all this anger, you should go jump in the pool when you get home.
It's just not open yet.
All right, greatest day in the history of the world. We like to go old school. 1929, Bobby Jones. If you're a golf person or really into sports, you've heard of Bobby Jones. Helped design Augusta National. Was a phenomenal golfer in the early 20th century. One of the greatest ever. Bobby Jones on this day in 1929 beat Al Espinosa in a 36-hole playoff to win the U.S. Open. You ready for this? So they're going to do a playoff, which means they're even, right, going into this playoff. A 36-hole playoff, Bobby Jones won it by 23 strokes. Obviously, our boy Al fell apart, and Bobby Jones won by 23 strokes. That's crazy. This day in 1965, the NFL grants Atlanta a franchise. Rankin Smith Sr., an executive vice president of the Life Insurance Company of Georgia, pays $8.5 million for the franchise, highest price paid in league history at the time. That was Rankin Smith. $8.5 million at the time. And he sold, I'm guessing he sold to Arthur Blank. Would be my guess. I'm looking it up right now. Wonder how much old Rankin made on that deal. The Falcons, the franchise was purchased from Taylor Smith, the son of Rankin Smith, so it was a Smith family. Ready for this? Bought the franchise for $8.5 million to join. They paid $8.5 million to join the NFL. The Smith family sold the Falcons for $545 million. That's a nice little profit. Just saying. Now the Atlanta Falcons, under Arthur Blank, is worth $6.1 billion. Bought the team in 2002 for $545 million after the Smith family made a really nice profit. And now the Falcons are valued at $6.1 billion. That would be a heck of a profit, too, if Arthur Blank sold the team. And, of course, the Falcons have never won a Super Bowl. They've been to a couple, and, oh, well. Should have won one. Up 24 against the Patriots. And you think about that. Think about if Atlanta wins that Super Bowl. What does it mean to Mike Smith, who was the head coach, Matt Ryan, the quarterback, who was the MVP that year. Look, to me, Matt Ryan's a Hall of Fame quarterback at some point. Put up excellent numbers throughout a long career. At the end, it got a little clunky. But was an upper-level franchise quarterback for a long time. Won an MVP award. If Matt Ryan and the Falcons win that Super Bowl, Matt Ryan is a first-ballot Hall of Famer in Cooperstown. That's the way we look at it. I mean, Eli Manning didn't get there on the first. Eli Manning will be a Hall of Famer off the fact that Eli Manning was the quarterback for 2 Super Bowl champion Giant teams. Yeah, Eli Manning put up some career numbers, like total numbers. But I've always said this, though. When I watched Eli Manning quarterback, I didn't go, wow, that's a Hall of Fame quarterback. No, I said that's a good quarterback. At times, a very good quarterback. But I never looked at him as a Hall of Fame quarterback. To me, Phillip Rivers was a better regular season quarterback than Eli Manning, but Phillip Rivers was terrible in the postseason. Well, Eli Manning, again, had 2 rings, so Eli Manning will get into the Hall of Fame before Phillip Rivers. Or Matt Ryan, for that matter. And I thought Matt Ryan was a better regular season quarterback than Eli Manning. But you got those rings, and Manning played really well in both of those Super Bowl runs for the Giants. Outplayed Tom Brady twice in the Super Bowl. That's going to get you in. That's just the way this thing goes. So if Matt Ryan and the Falcons hold on to win that Super Bowl, the Matt Ryan conversation totally changes. The way it is. This day in 1975, Muhammad Ali retains the World Heavyweight Championship by beating Joe Bugner. Now, Bugner went the distance with Ali in a rematch in Malaysia in 1975. And look, Muhammad Ali wasn't the fighter he was in the 60s by 1975, but still, most people thought that Ali, might not even go the distance against Bugner. And Bugner was a good fighter, don't get me wrong. 1978, Willie McCovey becomes the 12th player in Major League history to hit 500 home runs. Willie McCovey was a phenomenal hitter and a good defensive player at first base. Easy Hall of Famer was Willie McCovey. One of those Giant teams, those San Francisco Giant teams with Willie Mays, once they moved from New York to San Francisco. This day in 1993, at the NBA draft, the Orlando Magic draft Chris Webber with the first pick overall, then trade Webber to Golden State. Where Webber was a good player in the NBA. He was never a great player. He was a good player, very good player. But not Hall of Fame great or Hall of Fame good, but he was really good. He just never was the player a lot of people thought he was going to be. Look, Webber could score, he could rebound, he could pass. But with Webber, and I don't know, maybe because of the end of that Michigan National Championship game where Webber called a timeout where he didn't have one, I don't know. But it seemed like Chris Webber, whenever the game was tight, Webber didn't want the rock. He didn't want the ball at the end of games. He was the opposite of that guy, give me the ball, give me the ball, give me the ball, and go win us the game. Webber was like, you take the ball, you take the ball, you take the ball to go win the game. But Webber was a good pro. I think people have kind of diminished his NBA career in some ways, where he was a good player, just not a Hall of Fame player. But on this day, Webber was drafted first overall in 1993. 1994, Diego Maradona is kicked out of the World Cup by FIFA for failing a drug test following Argentina's win over Nigeria. Diego Maradona was, people will say, one of the most gifted soccer players in the history of the game. This dude couldn't get out of his own way. Just couldn't get out of his own way. And Eddie Murray in 1995 became the second switch hitter in the 20th player in baseball history to reach 3,000 hits on this day in 1995. It's the greatest day in the history of the world. We'll do our handoff with Elijah Campbell, sponsored by Little Pigs in Alpine. Also get our Firehouse sub text the hour at 803-404-6100. As we wrap up the halftime show, Terry Ford, David Dare, hanging out here on the game. All righty. Our Firehouse Sub text the hour, 803-404-6100. Circling back to PJ Dean again, we got a lot of text on that today. I know that Wes is saying that Dean is leaning South Carolina, but I always get nervous about these things until they're official. Well, here's the thing, and I get it, and, again, Wes Mitchell thinks that Dean will, at 3:30, commit verbally to South Carolina. But again, it's just a verbal. It's like, do you think Georgia will stop recruiting him anyway? No.
Because, people don't stop recruiting you once you sign. The whole tampering thing, like that happens pretty prominently.
The verbal, look, I understand why you started the verbal commitment process. Because you were hoping a kid now could concentrate on playing high school football or concentrate on this or that and not be deluged. But they still get deluged because it's not official. You didn't sign your letter of intent. You're just saying, I'm going to play there. If no matter which school Dean picks today, you think the other school's going to stop recruiting him?
Nope.
I mean, we're looking at Dickerson, the quarterback, Landon Dickerson at South Carolina, decommitted from South Carolina from the verbal, reopened his recruitment. You know who's still recruiting him and might be the favorite? South Carolina.
Yeah. I mean, for all the ladies and fellas listening right now, how many of you have gotten into Facebook, commitments? We'll call those commitments. Go on Facebook official with your significant other, and the inquiries, so to say, with your partner did not stop.
Right.
There's still maybe some sending messages, being a little more
just
inquisitive.
Because you're verbally committed
won't stop the sharks from swimming, brother.
There's nothing's on paper, man.
Yep. It does not stop.
Nothing's on paper. So appreciate the text. And yeah, you're right. Until you sign the letter of intent. And then in our world now, like you said, you bring up tampering. I mean, guys get tampered with all the time about the portal. And again, guys can always leave to go in a portal. You're always re-recruiting your own players. I would not want to be a head coach to save my life today. No, thank you.
No, absolutely. Imagine being a head coach with nobody in like that general manager or director of player personnel spot.
Yeah, you're the guy.
Where you're the one doing all the scouting. And you're doing the recruiting and the re-recruiting.
It's interesting because you know this because you follow college basketball so closely. North Carolina. Now you think a basketball, one of the meccas of college basketball, Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Hubert Davis was operating one hand tied behind his back. He didn't have a GM, and a lot of the money because everybody was loving about the big shiny Bill Belichick. Everybody's going, well, no, Carolina basketball, everybody wants to play at North Carolina. Everybody wants to play for the Blue. No, you know what these kids want? To get paid to play for the Blue.
Yeah, and here's the thing. North Carolina basketball still spent a ton of money in the transfer portal. You look at that roster, the Tar Heel fans think they have a shot to compete for a national title next year? No.
And that's the thing. They finally started, okay, we got to spend money because we're losing players to schools we have no business losing them to. And you still look at the roster and go, okay, it's great, but who's picking these players? And so, I mean, I guess my point is, being a head coach now, you recruit, you get a verbal, it's not permanent. You get the letter of intent, it's still not permanent because you got to re-recruit your kids. And then they hit the portal, and then you got to do all this over again. You're never, ever, ever feeling safe.
Yes. So if Dean commits today, you should still be excited, but cautious. I would say have a sense of cautious optimism.
And you'll be checking for that at 3:30. Jay's not here. What do you got on the shindig, man?
Fun start bench drop today, including some postseason formats. And my man Ben Portnoy from the Sports Business Journal will be hanging out in studio in the 4 o'clock hour.
Penn Portnoy.
Penn Portnoy.
Who's another favorite of mine.
That's his evil twin.